Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1358 of the War News stream. And we have very big news today that U.S. B-52 bombers have deployed to the Russian border and buzzed the border near Estonia. We've also seen that gunfires erupted on the Thailand and Cambodia border, and also Iran is warning of an imminent evacuation of Tehran due to the water crisis. And we have very big news from around the world, and it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have heard significant developments once again from practically every single corner of the globe. We were able to hear that the United States of America buzzed the border today in a show of force against the Russian Federation within the areas of Finland and Estonia with B-52H Stratofortress bombers, along with multiple other aircraft of the United States Air Force and United States Army that were at the disposal of U.S. EUCOM's command over the course of the day. Meanwhile, we have also seen that the Russian Federation is entering a crisis mode at this moment, as multiple Russian oil companies appear to be reaching the absolute breaking point financially and may be on the verge of collapse within the imminent future. Meanwhile, the armed forces of Ukraine have also continued to hold the line against the Russian Federation's armed forces, inflicting significant casualties over the course of the day, while simultaneously conducting massive counterattack efforts around the area of Pokrovsk and clearing out some areas of the northern flank and also some other areas of other fronts, including those on the Lehman battlefield. Outside of that, we have also heard that firefights have now broken out today between Thailand and Cambodia in full, with at least one soldier killed in the midst of the firefight. At the same time, we have also heard that the Chinese are already working on the construction of the Type 004 class aircraft carrier, which will be China's first nuclear-powered aircraft when it enters service in several years. There has also been a heavy amount of air activity around the area of the Pakistani-Indian border, suggesting that the Republic of India may be preparing for eventual strikes against the Islamic Islamic Republic of Pakistan within the inevitable future. Meanwhile, the blank boxes have been recovered from the mysterious C-130J crash, which occurred in the Republic of Turkey, or more so within the area of the Georgia-Armenian border with Turkey yesterday, while at the same time, the Iranian government out of Iran is stating that the city authorities have now measured the water supply, and there is only about 9 days of water supplies left within the above ground water reservoirs, and that mandatory evacuations may have to happen much sooner than it was originally anticipated. Meanwhile, the United States of America has also stated that the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China is a significant threat, most importantly, the People's Republic of China and its ongoing rapid military buildup, along with many other activities and projects that the People's Republic of China has been undertaking in recent times. Meanwhile, a drone of an unknown type actually flew over a French train that was stopped near to the area of the Gare du Nord train station within Paris. It is an incredibly peculiar incident, considering that the train was carrying Leclerc main battle tanks of the French army, and that this incident happened within the literal center of the city of Paris. There is an ongoing investigation by French authorities at the moment, but it is suspected that this may be another reconnaissance drone, like many others, that have been spotted over NATO states within the prior months. We have, of course, as usual, a massive amount of news to cover, and these are just the headliners, folks. This isn't even the whole of the news that we have to cover tonight, and we are going to be making sure, as we always have for 1,357 days, to bring y'all through all of the major news that we have over the course of the night, starting with our largest stories first, and then working our way on down into the slightly smaller stories throughout the night. And so, without further ado, folks, let us get on into the news, or as we should say, the new, because we are starting to hear of some fairly new developments, at least within the United States of America's European Command area of responsibility along the Russian frontier. Over the course of the day, we were able to report that multiple aircraft of the United States Armed Forces, including those of the Air Force and the U.S. Army, were openly spotted and flying with transponders on near to the Russian Federation's border, most particularly that of the B-52 Stratofortress. This B-52 Stratofortress did not conduct a small flight just through Estonia. This B-52H Stratofortress was involved in a flight which started in Spain. They flew all the way across Europe into Finland, then flew all the way along the southern Russian-Finnish border, then across the Gulf of Finland into Estonia, flew several laps in between Estonia and Latvia directly across from the Russian border, and then bounced and flew back to Spain to its airbase of origin. This was quite a significant move, considering that flying larger strategic bombers like this near to another nation's border is usually considered to be a show of force, or at least a test, to be able to see what the enemy air force's reaction times may possibly be in a given scenario where there may be an attack conducted on them as a surprise scenario. We also saw larger amounts of flights that were also conducted side by side with this B-52H Stratofortress that occurred in Estonia today, including the flight of a British Eurofighter Typhoon of the Royal Air Force, which appears to have been conducting some sort of a screen or escort of the B-52, while a Boeing E-3A Sentry operated by NATO itself was also conducting a flight within the area and was conducting an orbit around the city of Parnu within southwestern Estonia. We are believing at this point that the Eurofighter Typhoon and the presence of the E-3 Sentry may be showing that while the offensive side of the operation was largely U.S.-led on the show of force side of things, it appears that the operation has heavy markings of a NATO operation, an international operation behind it, due to the presence of the NATO E-3 Sentry operated by NATO itself, along with the Royal Air Force Eurofighter Typhoon, which appears to have possibly provided an escort to the U.S. B-52 Stratofortress bomber that was in the area. But we would be amiss to just mention the air operations that happened in Estonia when there was also a large amount of additional air operations that were conducted inside of Finland, including the flight of an S-102 Korpen of what we believe to be the Swedish Air Force. We also were able to see another E-3 Sentry, NATO 001. That was the one that actually arrived within Estonia later within the day. We also saw the Jake 37, which was an RC-135 rivet joint, which was also conducting a flight within the area, which was soon joined by the B-52 Stratofortress, which followed right behind it. That is a lot of flights to be conducted by generally the NATO alliance at large. The British, the Swedish, the United States of America, and the NATO alliance as a whole, due to the E-3 Sentry, were present today within this air operation that was conducted quite literally within the Russian Federation's air defense identification zone, or at least incredibly close to it, on the other side of the border within NATO airspace. We are assuming at this point that the United States of America is conducting a show of force within the area as a part of a larger international operation that was conducted by other members of the NATO alliance, including the other countries that were just mentioned, the British and the Swedish, that also had their flights in the air at the same time today. This is giving us an indicator that the United States of America is starting to put a little bit more, I guess you could say, elbow grease on the Russians. What this would be called in other corners of the world, particularly by the Chinese, is a low-level coercion effort. And these sorts of operations are very indicative of what the Chinese have been doing against Taiwan for a while to try and put a little bit of elbow grease on that situation and force the Taiwanese to give in to their demands. Let me show you all the parallels here to give you all an idea of what the U.S. really did today in spirit. When the Chinese try and pressure Taiwan to join the Communist Chinese and become a part of Communist China or die, they usually conduct a huge amount of flights with the Chinese Air Force around the air defense identification zone of Taiwan, in usually large numbers within the dozens, or they conduct a major naval and air operation such as a joint SOAR military exercise. This usually has the intention of putting fear within the Taiwanese government and its officials, and through that fear, hoping to compel them to follow along with what China wants, otherwise they'll suffer the consequences. That appears to be identically what the United States did to the Russians today, by flying a B-52H Stratofortress, which does possess a great deal of firepower, especially in the modern day, due to its ability to pretty much be a cruise missile bus. The United States of America is generally showing the Russian Federation that the U.S. does possess the firepower and capability to start laying waste to the Russian Federation if the Russian Federation ever decided to take a foolish action, such as starting a larger war with NATO, or not adhering to our demands about eventually ending the war in Ukraine. The Russians do seem to be a little bit keen on this. Of course, they're not unfamiliar with low-level coercion efforts, considering that they are usually one of the largest users of such actions, but a lot of people have been talking about this B-52 flight that buzzed the border today along Finland, Estonia, and Latvia, and their opinions and thoughts about what this was supposed to be as far as a sign or signal that was given by the United States of America. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so obviously this was a very big air operation by NATO, the U.S., and our partners in NATO, and this was a very big deal because we literally sent the B-52s right by the border of Russia through Estonian airspace and other NATO airspace, which is very similar to what we've been doing down near Venezuela. We've also been sending B-52s that way as well and buzzing the Venezuelan coastline. So Russia is getting almost the Venezuela treatment at this point, which is obviously going to rattle them a little bit. So what was the intent behind this buzzing of their airspace? And 73% said the USA is sending Russia a sharp warning, while 14% said the USA is testing Russia's border defenses, and 8% said it seems like a routine exercise. And this one, it could be a combination of multiple different options here, but me personally, I'm with the 73%. This was more about sending Russia a warning. This was a warning to Putin to let him know that NATO is going to take their airspace seriously, I guess to an extent, because of course they haven't done anything about the drone incursions, but they're also sending mixed signals here. They're sending B-52s to the border of Russia, but we're not shooting down the Russian drones flying over NATO airspace. So it's a warning, but it's a very mixed signals warning, if I do say so myself. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the flight of the B-52 generally seems to be geared more towards preventing the Russians, or at least giving them a good reason to prevent themselves from starting a larger ground war with NATO, such as a possible invasion of the Baltics or Finland, considering that this flight was conducted within that very area, which is the major risk or concern area as far as NATO is thinking, or at least planning at the moment, if the Russian Federation was to conduct a larger full-scale war with us. This flight isn't supposed to be trying to warn the Russians to stop the drone incursions over Europe. It's supposed to give the message that if the Russian Federation tries to conduct an official conventional ground war with NATO in an attempt to close off the Suwalki Gap and possibly besiege the Baltics or start a larger offensive on the Finnish border, the United States of America and the rest of the NATO alliance, through the British, the Swedes, and so on, will be present, and they will also conduct significant air operations against the Russian Federation that they highly likely wouldn't be able to defend themselves against, considering that the Russian Air Force has a very low amount of training and realistic figures. They also have a low budget, a small number of available airframes, and the NATO alliance combined, including the United States of America and our allies in Europe, have the largest flying air force seen anywhere in the world in terms of multi-role platforms and generally strike platforms that we have available, not including our support aircraft, which are also endless and numerous compared to pretty much everyone else on the planet. The Russian Federation is supposed to be put in fear not of conducting these drone incursions. It appears that that's not really being addressed at the moment, but they're supposed to be put in fear of even considering the idea of starting a larger war with NATO. And I would also believe that this may be a response to the November 4th decree out of Putin's office that they were going to start year-round conscription to quote-unquote protect key sites, but it generally looks like it's a mass conscription to prepare for a possible war with NATO. This may also be trying to give a message that that is not the smartest idea whatsoever, and that there will be severe consequences if they try and start a war with NATO. That's generally what I would believe.
It's still just it's a strange message to send, though, because if you recall, NATO, specifically the United States, actually recently pulled out of their forces out of some of the Baltic states. So that there is a little bit interesting to do that, because obviously pulling U.S. forces out of the Baltic states, that is basically giving Putin a green light to a certain degree that the U.S. is not going to defend the Baltics the way that maybe Putin thought we would. But at the same time, we're sending B-52s to the border of Russia's airspace and trying to at least allegedly send a message of strength. So I'm not really sure. And once again, it's very confusing messaging. It's very odd messaging here. I'm not really sure what the objective is behind it. It seems like a message they're sending, but with the other actions combined with it, it seems like it's not very cohesive.
I would say possibly it may not be the most cohesive thing ever, but at the same time, the United States didn't have a massive contingent of forces that were inside of the Baltics. At best, we had maybe several companies worth of men, but it didn't even equate to an entire battalion. And if we look at the NATO forces disposition map, or at least which has been completed for the Baltics so far, and then was pretty much postponed beyond that because the Russians are insanely difficult to map out, and so I lost a lot of motivation to be able to try and do this. We still mapped out all of the forces that were inside of the Baltics, except for a singular German panzer brigade, which is stationed inside of Lithuania. But at the same time, there were absolutely no U.S. forces in any large scale at a brigade level command or even a battalion level command that were permanently stationed inside the Baltics or even temporarily stationed inside the Baltics when this map was made. So the U.S. forces being withdrawn were liaisons in maybe the couple of hundreds across the entirety of the area in non-combat roles. So as far as battlefield efficiency, at least within the Baltics, nothing really changed because the liaisons really weren't augmenting the actual combat firepower of these forces within the area. They were more so just giving expertise and pointers to the Baltic forces, which at this point, really, to be honest, the only country that needs pointers is Latvia, and the Lithuanians and the Estonians are perfectly fine. They have regular contract soldiers that operate as full-time professionals within their armed forces, while Latvia still largely leans on its National Guard forces and National Guard brigades, which are spread throughout the entirety of the country and made up generally of part-timers, reservists, or conscripts. So not really a lot has changed, at least as far as the combat abilities that are present within the Baltics, and while the U.S. did withdraw our liaisons from the area, I would believe that the show force is also showing at the same time that the U.S. does back up the Baltics and Finland 100% in a possible scenario where the Russian attempts to invade the region.
But you do have to admit, though, that even though it was a largely symbolic deployment of U.S. forces in the Baltics, it still sends a bad message to Putin, because Putin is ramping up his escalation. He's ramping it up even more severe than ever. And then the U.S. says at the exact same time, let's remove our liaisons from the Baltic states and just leave them basically alone by themselves in the Baltics. Even though it's a small contingent, it's not that big of a deal from a strategic sense. From a symbolic sense, it's huge because it's at a very bad time to do that. So me personally, my complaint right now is no cohesive messaging right now. It seems like it's confused, and when NATO seems confused like that and they don't seem like they're well put together, they have a cohesive plan, that sends a message to Putin that maybe NATO is weak and they're not as formed together as maybe the Axis alliance, like for example China, Russia, North Korea. Maybe they're not as cohesive as that, which is dangerous in a wartime setting like we're looking at right now.
It's possible, and generally, at least on the symbolic side of things, there would be an impact. But at the same time, as far as the combat abilities within the region, they haven't really been changed at all due to the disappearance of the U.S. liaisons within the area. So while on a symbolic level, it doesn't look that good, in a practical sense of does this change the ability of the Baltics to be able to defend themselves, U.S. liaisons would have had no impact on their ability to defend themselves, considering that they're only there in an advisory and training role, and that they would have never been seen to be involved in actual combat operations such as the defense of the Baltics. Still, I would agree with you, not a good idea, but at the same time, as far as the actual situation on the ground is concerned, it didn't really change much of anything, at least for the defensive capabilities of the region. Still, it is a little bit confused, at least on the symbolism side of things, because a singular B-52 bomber, while it can carry a large amount of cruise missiles, would not be able to lay waste to the entirety of the Russian Federation on its own. So it is a little bit weird that in one way we did withdraw the token liaisons in the Baltics, and then simultaneously we conduct a token show of force with a singular B-52H, supported by a Eurofighter Typhoon and an E-3 Sentry, the Eurofighter Typhoon from Britain and the Sentry from NATO itself. It is a little bit odd, but still, at least it's something of a good sign to some degree. Although I will always have to say this, folks, and this is something that we endlessly drill, at least as a belief here on the channel, it is a bad idea in general for the U.S. to ever withdraw forces from pretty much anywhere in the world. It's never turned out to be that good of an idea. For example, look at Afghanistan, look at the Middle East, and look at generally Eastern Europe at the moment. It's never a good idea for the United States to leave, because after we leave, there's always a great deal of regrets that we left, because we are generally giving strategic areas over to the void, where nothing is there really, rather than the countries that already were within the area, or there is nothing. And it generally encourages our adversaries and enemies of the Republic and our alliance to try and take advantage of such a situation. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the other major news of the night that is happening right across the border within the Russian Federation. Because while the United States is conducting a show of force directly along the Russian border with NATO, we also have seen that the Russian Federation is dealing with a significant crisis within its own borders today. And this is one that you just can't make up if you wanted to. This was one that we would have loved to have seen in our wildest dreams, and it's coming around to really happening at this point. Russia's oil giants are on the brink. Shares have plummeted nearly 20% amid the ongoing sanctions. Sanctions on Lukoil and Rosneft have triggered a crisis in Russia's oil industry. Bloomberg reports that almost 1 billion barrels of oil are currently stuck in tankers worldwide with no buyers. Most of that stuck oil is Russian. Investors also fear that sanctions will prevent the companies from offloading foreign assets without losses. Globally, countries are rejecting Russian oil products. Brazil, which is a BRICS member, sharply reduced imports of Russian diesel, while Indian and Chinese oil companies have significantly cut or almost completely stopped buying Russian crude. In Finland, Lukoil's Teboil fuel network announced it will cease operations due to the crippling sanctions. And recently, Lukoil declared force majeure at one of the world's largest oil fields in Iraq after the Iraqis halted payments over the ongoing sanctions. Suffice it to say, Russia's main economic tether is about to collapse, through Lukoil and Rosneft in particular. Lukoil and Rosneft make up the lion's share of the Russian Federation's ability to make money, and for that extension, their ability to raise taxes. Taxes, while everyone hates them, is an incredibly important and crucial part to the maintenance and function of a national government or a nation at large. The Russian Federation is not having any tax revenues coming in hardly at all any longer, because their main tax generators, the oil companies, are pretty much seeing that they're not making any profits. And even at this point, it's a huge fear of these companies inside of Russia, especially Lukoil and Rosneft, that if they try and offload assets like their oil ships to try and at least keep the company afloat for a little bit longer, no one might be able to even buy the ships, or they might have to sell them at an extreme loss to find anyone who could even afford the ships. So basically, these companies are literally collapsing right now before our very eyes. We've been saying this for a while, that they've been getting to a collapse. They are on the verge of collapse right now. If they are having to consider the possibility of selling their oil tankers to try and keep the company afloat, that means that they are pretty much, in a more creative sense, conducting liquidation at this moment, or seriously considering liquidation to at least keep the company alive on paper. Even still more so, think about all of the barrels of crude oil that are on these ships right now around the entirety of the globe that have no buyers. Nobody is buying the stuff even.
No
That is
buyers, Nope, no buyers. That's the official story right there. But there's always someone out there to buy something. Now, obviously, the sanctions are a huge barrier to buying the Russian oil. But at the same time, though, I'm not naive. Like most of us know, they're going to try to find a way around that. And I think we've already seen proof they're trying to find a way around it because we've heard and seen at least allegations and pictures appearing to show some Chinese vessels pulling up next to these Russian oil tankers, offloading the oil from the Russian ship via a ship-to-ship transfer, and then they'll take it and then they'll pretend like they got it from somewhere else other than Russia. So that's oil sitting on these ships right here. And imagine on the, I guess you'd call it the black market of oil, imagine how cheap that Russian oil would be just so Russia could try to at least recoup their costs somewhat. Russia would probably sell that oil at a huge discount, knowing that they have to sell it on the black market. So there's probably people out there buying that oil, probably not selling it the way they were selling it, but surely they're selling enough to at least cover some of their costs, I would imagine.
I would doubt it. Ship-to-ship transfers are incredibly difficult to conduct and very slow and laborious sorts of processes. That's the reason why they're not done commonly, because if it was incredibly easy and efficient to do, they wouldn't even have a ship that would load the oil or large oil loading ports. They would just have a ferry ship that would go out and meet the main ship at sea, transfer the oil to it, and then just bring that singular ship right back to port and offload the oil that way. It's really not economically feasible or logistically feasible to conduct the long, slow, and arduous process of trying to transfer oil from one ship to the other while they're both at sea and not in a safe harbored area. The only way that we've seen the ship-to-ship transfer being conducted so far, at least at the moment, is in the Strait of Malacca, in between Malaysia and Indonesia. And even still, we have only seen proof of one or two of these transfers being conducted, and beyond that, it appears that those transfers have not been conducted at all. A rougher sea state, even more so than a perfectly calm sea state, could completely stop or handicap a process of a ship-to-ship transfer, meaning that that would be logistically infeasible to conduct over any longer period of time, as these ships will have to keep their crews fed and paid, as well as keeping the ship's maintenance, which a ship at sea is endlessly costing money while it's sitting out there not at port. And that is something that the Russian companies, which are already ailing to be able to have any money at all to keep their functions running, don't have the money to be able to spend, is just having a crew and a ship sitting out at sea for an even longer period of time, waiting for the seas to calm down, so that way a Chinese tanker can pull up alongside and then conduct a several day-long oil transfer process from one ship to the next, and then they even get a discounted price on the oil at that, which doesn't even really cover the operations of the ship, and they're still running in the red. So I would generally say that while they can try and conduct some of these ship-to-ship transfers, this is not a viable way to keep these Russian companies alive and afloat. That's also why their stocks are collapsing, and that's also why, for many other reasons, the Russian Federation is in financial death throes at the moment, with multiple companies that would rely on the spare money that would be circulated around because of the success of the Russian oil companies are starting to resort to 4-day and 3-day work weeks, or they're completely stopping assembly and production of any sorts of products and goods because there's hardly any money left circulating around the Russian economy, because most of the people who work within the petroleum industry are not even getting paid or making any money at this point, because the Russian oil companies are not making any money either.
Me personally, I would have to say I'm still a little bit skeptical because Russia has the time to kill. Like, for example, it may take longer to do ship-to-ship transfers. It may be more risky. It may be more difficult. But Russia's alternative is to simply hold the oil on ships and keep burning money to actually store the oil on those vessels that can't sell the oil. So they have the time to kill. So if someone's willing to buy the Russian oil at a discounted rate, then all they have to do is simply pull up and attempt a ship-to-ship transfer, sell the oil at a discount, and that gives the Russian oil companies just enough liquidity from the sale of that oil, even at the discounted price, to at least try to cover some of their costs, so that way they don't go bankrupt. Because otherwise, I would say personally, these Russian oil companies are definitely, almost certainly going to go bankrupt, because if they're not even covering their costs, I mean, they're already in foul shape. They're having a hard time selling the oil even before the sanctions. Now with the sanctions, now they're really hurting. So they can only get so many bailouts. They've got to sell some oil at least to cover costs. So they're going to find a way. They have to find a way. They have all the incentive in the world to try to find somewhere to sell it.
But who would they sell it to?
They could sell it to China like they've been allegedly doing behind the scenes, ship-to-ship transfer to China, or they could sell it to any of the new Axis powers. They could sell it to anybody who's willing to accept it.
I don't know if that would be feasible. And also on top of that, the new Axis powers, at least from what we know publicly, are all sharply reducing their purchase orders, and we're also seeing purchase orders being created in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia and Iraq and elsewhere, to be able to get access to that oil. So they can't be doing two things at the same time, because these other companies that are purchasing this oil aren't working off of fantasy dollars. They can't go and get an equal purchase order out of Saudi Arabia for a certain amount of hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil, and then at the same time also pay the Russians for an additional hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil that at that point they don't even need, because they filled out the purchase order in Saudi Arabia or Iraq or elsewhere already to be able to get that oil from somewhere else. We already know that the Chinese and especially the Indians are moving down that path rapidly. So it wouldn't make any sense for those companies to go, you know what, while we're also getting this oil from Saudi Arabia and Iraq, we're also going to buy that same volume that we've already replaced the Russian purchase orders with from Russia anyways, and then also conduct an extremely expensive and lengthy ship-to-ship oil transfer to try and circumvent sanctions. And still, on top of that, at least for India, there's nowhere for them geographically to even do that unless if it was the Strait of Malacca, because they have to find some area that is at least protected from the open seas to be able to conduct a transfer, because you need perfectly calm seas for these ships to conduct ship-to-ship transfers. It's an incredibly difficult and very technical process, and it requires the sea to pretty much be as smooth as glass. Otherwise, they can't really conduct the ship-to-ship transfer, as it would be too dangerous, and the tethers along with the actual pipes may completely break or disconnect in the rough seas. So generally, I would say that while they can try and do that, there's no way that they can do that on such a large scale to keep these Russian companies alive, generally.
I would still disagree personally, because remember, I heard you making the point. Why would some of these countries start trying to buy Russian oil if they're already getting it from elsewhere and they've already got purchase orders that they can honor elsewhere at a similar price, I guess you could say? Why would they do that for Russia? You're assuming that the only reason these countries would be buying Russian oil is because they need it. But that's not the whole story, though. Remember, the Axis countries here, China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, etc., they want themselves to be cohesive right now, because if we're looking at any potential world war in the future, which I think most people at this point recognize is a real possibility. In fact, it's almost a certainty. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. Then those Axis powers are going to want to make sure that each one of their parts, including Russia, is strong enough to be able to at least pull their weight in a world war scenario, because they don't want to lose Russia. Even though Russia is, not their best friend necessarily, they're still an ally geopolitically. So they need Russia and their large amount of people they can conscript to be able to use them as manpower in the event of a world war. So these Axis countries have all the incentive in the world to help Russia out by throwing them a lifeline and purchasing the oil nonetheless, just like China has been doing. They're doing that to try to prop up the Russians, so that way the country doesn't collapse.
Possibly so, but still, I would have to say, I would doubt that they'll be able to do that in any larger, easily feasible sort of a way to keep the Russian oil companies alive, because the Russian oil companies require at least 60 to 70% just about of their products to make it to market for them to break even. We already know that because only about 50% of their output has been seen through the war, and they've been losing profits quite significantly as a result of that. So with them now down to about 20% or less, there really is no way for them to say, yeah, with 20% of our product getting out, we can keep these companies afloat and keep them rolling for a while. But beyond that, a lot of people have also been talking about that in the question that Matthew has asked all of y'all. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So now that we are seeing the Russian oil companies, they are plummeting in value. I think they've lost like 20% in value, according to the reporting that we have. After the sanctions now prevent the sale of Russian oil, what are your thoughts? What is going to happen as a result of that? And it looks like 53% of the audience said Russian oil will collapse and Russia will collapse as a result of that, while 30% said Russian oil will collapse but Russia survives, and 10% said nothing will collapse. So on this one, I'll say this. I am not totally confident right now that Russia is going to collapse due to the oil having an issue because, like I sort of mentioned, I think Russia is getting a bailout from their allies around the world, like China, etc. I believe they are getting some bailouts. So that is going to prolong a collapse of the Russian economy because remember, the one thing we've been saying the entire time is the easiest way for Ukraine to win the war, in fact, the most viable way for them to win the war, is by attacking these Russian oil refineries and impacting the Russian oil industry. That is the best way to end it because winning on the front lines is almost impossible at this point because Russia simply keeps throwing too many troops at the issue and that prevents a Ukrainian victory in totality on the front. So while Ukraine can hold their ground, they're not going to be able to just push the Russians and steamroll them. That's not really going to be possible. So Ukraine's been doing the right thing, but it's just, in my opinion, it's just not realistic to think that Russia's not going to find a way to at least sell the oil enough to keep their companies afloat. I think these allies of Russia will keep them afloat. So I'm with the 52%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally have to say that if the Russian oil industries collapse, the Russian Federation is going to collapse. I'm going to be with the 52% on that. There is no way on the planet that any of the countries that are a part of BRICS or a part of the Axis powers could ever support the Russian Federation financially as a dead husk and keep them going indefinitely. It would cost far too much money for any single country. Look at how much it costs, by the way. Let's just put this into perspective. For the U.S. to bail out Argentina, it costs us about $40 billion at this point, and it's mostly going to cost additional amounts of billions, in the tens of billions, every several months to try and keep them alive and afloat because of how badly their economy is functioning at the moment. The Russian Federation has a larger gross domestic product by a far larger margin than that of Argentina, and it would take a larger amount of money to be able to keep the Russian Federation running than it would a small country like Argentina, even with the Russian Federation's incredibly abysmal economic output as it's seen right now. If the Russian oil companies collapse, at that point, the main artery of Russian industry that keeps the entire economic system in Russia alive is dead. That means that everything else that is an external or in a tertiary sort of an industry would have to be pretty much kept on life support at that point by a foreign country, meaning that they would have to find a way to come up with the money that the Russian oil companies used to make and then just throw that into the Russian economy every single month to try and keep everything alive, at least at a bare minimum. There's no way that any country on the planet could afford to conduct such an action like that for a nation that had a gross domestic product of approximately $2.2 trillion. China would never be able to come up with the money for that, and there would never be a return on that kind of input into the Russian economy that would ever come back out. It's literally money that's going into a pit to just try and keep the Russian nation alive hardly, and they don't really get anything back out of it at all. Russia is completely militarily spent. They have hardly any equipment left. They also are economically spent. At that point, the economy is literally collapsed, and the Chinese have put them on life support to try and keep them alive for longer. And so there's literally nothing at all, strategically or economically, that they could get back out of the Russians to justify that expense. On top of that, China would also have to come up with the money, which is a whole other issue in and of itself. They would have to go to foreign banks and start to lend massive amounts of money and then take that money and just hand it right over to the Russians. None of that money would be going into the Chinese economy to eventually make a return off of some additional industrial output or some sort of industrial economic output of any sort. That wouldn't even exist. They would just be throwing it into Russia, taking on a massive amount of debt for their own nation and getting absolutely nothing out of it back from Russia. And even still, that might not stop a Russian economic collapse because additional economic sectors that may have relied on the oil industry as their main customer may also go under, which means that China either has to go and also start supporting or filling the fissure that those companies created due to their additional collapses, or they just won't, and then the Russian economy will still end up dying anyways, along with the Russian Federation.
Imagine this, though, to sort of make my point a little bit better. Imagine this. Imagine we're in the situation we're in right now, where the world is literally teetering right on the edge of a global conflict, and it seems like people keep delaying it. It sort of gets right back to the precipice, and then it gets slightly delayed again, but we're still creeping and we're inching toward World War III. Most people know that. But imagine right now if Russia suddenly actually had that massive, catastrophic economic collapse. Imagine if that actually happened, and for example, example, the people can't afford to buy anything, literally anything. Everybody's out of a job all of a sudden in Russia, and it's catastrophic. Imagine nobody can even get the basics like food or whatever they need. They're having a hard time getting it, and it's just turned into a complete cesspit, even worse than it is now inside of Russia. You're potentially, most likely going to see a ousting or some type of revolt against Putin's regime, because that's the only where the Russian people have an outlet, is to try to overthrow the current government. So if Russia falls apart like that and the government gets overthrown, imagine what position that's going to put the Axis powers of the world in, losing one of their largest groups of, I guess you could say, force compositions, which would be Russia at this point. The Axis, China, would be basically on their own. They'd be left with North Korea, they'd be left with Iran, they'd be left with all these small little rinky-dink countries that really don't have the same amount of manpower that Russia can pull on. So in my opinion, the Axis have all the reason in the world to make sure that Russia doesn't collapse, or they're going to be in some big trouble, because Russia, even in the state it's in, is pretty much their strongest ally at the moment.
But that is an interesting idea and a neat notion. But the thing is that in the Second World War, towards the latter end of really the middle part of 1943, the fascist Italian government, and really the economy of fascist Italy, collapsed in the middle of that year. And instead of Germany just bankrolling the Italians and keeping them alive, that actually resulted in the complete collapse of fascist Italy, and the Italians overthrew Benito Mussolini, and then he was practically exiled from his own government and country literally within a couple of weeks after that incident occurred. The Germans, being the third largest economy at that point in history, only third to the United Kingdom and the United States before the war, was not able to financially bankroll or save the Italians from their economic collapse, nor were they able to save the Japanese from their endless industrial quagmires that they found themselves in throughout the entirety of the war, which they too were never able to be helped or saved from, no matter how much the Germans tried endlessly to try and help improve the Japanese economic situation and industrial situation throughout the course of the conflict. So while that would seem to be a likely idea that they would like to keep Russia alive, the reality is that at least historically, the Nazi Germans were not able to keep the fascist Italians alive economically, or any other government that was aligned with them in the Axis powers throughout the entirety of the Second World War. Once they went down the tubes economically, they were practically on their own because there was no way to save them at that point.
So your position is this. Your position is Russia is essentially unsavable economically. They are doomed economically, and there's nothing that China can do to really save them. And you believe it's imminent. So in that case, wouldn't that essentially, if it happens the way you're thinking it's going to happen, wouldn't that essentially basically put the Axis powers at an extreme disadvantage during a World War scenario, though?
Yes, it would, but they really have no other option. I mean, there's nothing that they can do, unless if China wants to go bankrupt as well, trying to keep Russia alive for another year, which would be completely pointless if they're going down the tubes anyways. There's really nothing that they can do about it.
Maybe so. I don't know. I think we're going to have to disagree or agree to disagree on this one here. Me personally, I think they're going to keep Russia afloat. I think they've been keeping them afloat, because don't most people agree, like, for example, the people here watching in the chat, that Russia, according to all logic, should have collapsed by now. They should have experienced some sort of at least a minor economic collapse, and they seem to be generally stable. I mean, when I say stable for Russia, that's completely different from the U.S. stability. U.S. stability is way different than Russia's stability. But for Russia, though, they're generally stable right now, even though they're having issues financially. We're not seeing any real fallout yet, any significant fallout where you have people in the streets that are literally homeless all over the place. You don't really see that. It seems like everybody's generally existing, not in a great way, but they're still existing in an okay way, somewhat stable. So when does it actually happen? And it should have happened already.
Well, I mean, like, it should have happened already. Maybe they are trying to support them, but still, with them supporting them, we're getting a worse and worse economic picture out of Russia. Like you're saying, they are supporting them and they've lasted longer, but it's not like they've lasted longer and they're doing great. They're doing terribly right now. Most companies in Russia have resorted to 3-day work weeks, or they've completely stopped assembly of most goods or products, at least within the industrial sector. Most companies have laid off half of their staff. The resulting loss of railway traffic has resulted in the Russian railways laying off half of their staff recently within the last few weeks. So if the Chinese were bankrolling them and they could keep Russia alive perfectly fine, then why in the world are the Russians still collapsing at this point? And if this is all that China can do to keep them alive, which I would have to assume this is everything that they can do if they're doing that, the Russians won't stay alive for much longer. So China either has to go and bankrupt themselves to try and keep a country that's dying anyways alive for a little bit longer and it'll still die anyways, or they cut them loose and they drop dead tomorrow.
But don't you see, though, that the things you're talking about, like, for example, the Russian companies reducing the 3-day work weeks, that is a sign of economic trouble, granted. But the U.S. is also having similar signs, not the same exact signs, but they're having similar signs of economic trouble here in the United States, but we're not collapsing. So it's the same thing in Russia. If Russia was truly collapsing, we would see bankruptcies of these companies all over the place. They'd be declaring bankruptcy day in and day out. We're not seeing that. We're seeing them take protective measures to protect their company from going bankrupt, but they're not actually crossing the line and actually going bankrupt, which is something to me that indicates they're getting some sort of external help or the government's bailing out these companies in some way or another, and Russia doesn't have the money to bail them out. So where's Russia getting the money to keep these companies afloat? Because they should be going under, but they're not.
But at the same time, if a company is pretty much collapsed and it only is existing on paper and it's only getting enough money to exist on paper, that company pretty much is already collapsed at that point. It only exists in name only. Like a lot of these Russian oil companies, they practically aren't even producing anything anymore because of the Ukrainian attacks destroying the refineries, at least particularly for Lukoil, Rosneft, and Gazprom. There's practically nothing left of their refining abilities. So they might exist, but they have zero output hardly at this point. It practically is non-existent. Like, we could in America say, let's take, for example, Microsoft completely dies off. They're not selling computers or anything. But the US government keeps putting in about $1 billion a month to keep them alive on paper to where Microsoft still exists. So then can we make the argument that Microsoft pretty much is still alive and functioning just fine and everything's fine in America, or is Microsoft practically dead at that point? Microsoft would be dead. They're just being kept alive on paper and the staff at the corporate office are still working, but the company that was sitting under them that actually made the money, it's gone. They're just alive on paper at that point.
Maybe so. I mean, you have a decent point. Me personally, I'll just stick to my guns on this one. We'll see over time, though. Well, it's obviously we're going to see what's going to happen. It's going to happen pretty soon because something has to happen. Either Russia's going to keep, struggling, but they'll stay afloat like they've been doing because maybe they're getting outside help, or maybe they will have the collapse you're talking about. But we'll find out soon, though. We'll have to see who was right.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It's an interesting point. I think that you do have a point about the Chinese supporting them. I wouldn't disagree with that. I think there probably is some support, but even still, I just don't think they can survive even with the support. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the major news that we have over the course of the night. Quite an interesting rabbit hole, to say the least, and some very good points were brought up. But moving on from that and out of the Russian Federation, at least for a moment, we are going to be moving on over to the People's Republic of China, because they're already starting up their second round of carrier constructions, at least within recent years. They are now going to be working on the Type 004, which is going to be the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier within the People's Liberation Army Navy. This is a fairly interesting sort of a development, considering that the People's Republic of China currently does not possess a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, or much less a nuclear-powered warship in general. This means that the People's Republic of China is going to be entering new, unmapped waters, at least with maritime development and construction for their own nation, and we also don't really know if this is going to be a successful project, at least for them, considering that this will be their first iteration of a nuclear-powered carrier. Still, if they do eventually field a nuclear-powered carrier, at least in theory, this will give the carrier unlimited range. However, there's still going to be a caveat. The escort vessels of this aircraft carrier are not unlimited range, and they're not nuclear-powered. So they are still going to have to be refueled. And once those vessels start to get out of range of mainland China, where in the world did they get refueled? Nowhere. They have to return back to China. Or they have to go to Djibouti, which is the only other area that Chinese ships can refuel at. So then at that point, the carrier can travel forever, but it will not have an escort, which means that it's a sitting duck waiting to be blown up by the U.S. Navy. So while it is technically going to be unlimited range and give them a power projection ability, it isn't really going to be giving them a power projection ability because, unlike the United States, they will not be able to support or sustain a carrier strike group globally for an indefinite period of time like we can. And I see some people saying a tanker. This is the issue with tankers that generally would start to become a significant Achilles heel, at least in a major major war. The U.S. has refueling posts around the world for the Navy, an unlimited amount of them. We have some in Europe, we have some around South America, we have some around Africa, in the Middle East, and in Southeast Asia. China has none. So if they wanted to keep that carrier running, or the carrier strike group running, they're going to have a little conga line of fuel tankers following along with the strike group to refuel them. The issue with that is that those tankers will have to be escorted, meaning that there will have to be additional fuel consumed that those tankers will have to supply on top of fueling the carrier strike group. Then that means that those carriers are going to be generally still running out of fuel, and there really will be no way to end that sort of a problem right then and there. Also, if you don't give them an escort to conserve fuel consumption, then that means that the U.S. Navy can just strike the tankers while they're on the way to the strike group and destroy them outright and pretty much cut off the carrier strike group supply lines and leave them stranded in the middle of nowhere without any fuel. So generally, that sort of a scenario wouldn't be that good of a one, to be entirely honest with y'all. But still, with that, we are going to be moving on out of that little bit of news with the Type 004 class aircraft carrier that the Chinese are now constructing within a Chinese port, and we are going to be moving on down into another interesting story in Southeast Asia. This one is actually pretty much expected at this point, right on schedule. But before we move on from that, it does appear that Matthew has ran another poll. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so I wanted to get everybody's opinion real quick because I saw a lot of people agreeing with Andrew and I saw a lot of people agreeing with me as well. So I wanted to get the numbers to see what y'all thought about our debate we just had. And the question is Russia's economy able to survive by outside economic support from China? That was basically the entire crux of the debate. And it looks like 51% of the audience said, I agree with the enforcer and Russia cannot survive with outside economic support from China. While 32% said, I agree with enforcer Matt, and about 18% were unsure and undecided. So it looks like actually most people agree with the enforcer on this. They believe that despite all the best efforts from China to prop up the Russian economy, that Russia's economy is going to collapse anyway. Me personally, I'm going to stick to my guns on this one, and we'll find out who was right or wrong in the end. But I believe that Russia will at least stay afloat, basically treading water with the outside support from China. I believe they've been doing that for a while now, and I think it will continue. But enforcer, what say you?
I would generally say that I still stick with my guns. I think that the Chinese cannot support the Russian Federation and keep them alive, and for that reason, they're probably going to cut them loose and let them go. But still, there is a decent amount of arguments that can be said that they can keep the Russians alive for longer, but I don't think that they can keep them alive indefinitely, even if that puts them at a disadvantage. At this point, Russia has played its cards poorly, and there's really no way to get around that issue. Much like the fascist Italians in the Second World War, they played their cards insanely poorly, and no matter how much the Nazi Germans would have wanted Italy to be around until the bitter end, they pretty much lost the Italians by 1943. So I would say that this situation is going to be very similar with the Russians. The Russians have played their cards wildly poorly. It does not matter what the Axis powers would want at this point, the Russians are doomed, and they're pretty much going to be going the way of the dodo probably within the next year and a half, I would assume. But moving on from that, and on out of that general news, it is time for us to get on down into the area of Thailand and Cambodia. As many of y'all know, Thailand and Cambodia actually entered a peace treaty just several weeks ago that was signed into force in Malaysia and also had the United States of America as a third-party intermediary between the two countries. We actually celebrated this as the first time that a temporary cheap ceasefire had turned into a permanent, meaningful peace. 3 weeks later, the peace has completely fallen apart. And as of today, we have been able to hear a report from the area of the border around the region of Sa Kaeo, which is just about 70 miles to the east of the capital of Thailand, the city of Bangkok, and we were able to hear a report that Cambodian soldiers fired in the Thai territory near Ban Nong Ya Kyo in Sa Kaeo province around 4 p.m. on Wednesday. Thai forces returned warning shots under the engagement, and the exchange lasted about 10 minutes with no Thai casualties. We are hearing, however, that there appears to have been some form of a casualty or a fatality in the form of a civilian. At least from what we were able to hear earlier on in the day, even before this, this, Thai soldiers have, accordingly to Cambodian media, the Phnom Penh Post, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, opened fire on civilians in Prechang village in the Bante Mianche province. 5 civilians were injured, and we did hear rumors later that one of those civilians had died from their injuries, although we do not know if the story is true. We did get the Cambodian side of the story, however, which is completely different, mind you, than the Thai side of the story. So let me get the Thai side of the story out really quickly so that you can see the discrepancies here, because something is not adding up. Several days ago, Thailand reported that the Thai army patrols near to the area of the Preah Temple were walking down well-trodden footpaths, meaning that they were heavily traveled, and stepped on a landmine, which must have been planted recently. The landmine resulted in the wounding of the 2 Thai soldiers that were at the head of this patrol, including one Thai soldier that ended up losing his leg as a result of the injury. After that, the Thai army forces then stated that the Cambodians engaged them in a firefight at 2 outposts within the area around the Preah Temple, around Surin and Ubon Ratchathani, and while no casualties had been sustained, the Cambodians were attempting to goad the Thai into breaking the peace treaty and breaking this into a full-blown war again. Then we were able to hear the Cambodian side of the story, which is very senseless, really. But here is the story. Ministry of National Defense of Cambodia. Summary of timeline of the situation along the Cambodia-Thailand border concerning the case that the Thai side began an unprovoked use of violence on the Cambodian innocent civilians in Prechang village, Obei-Chang commune, Otrav district. By the way, I forgot to mention, the Cambodians are technically still communist. Bante Mianche province, although they're a kingdom. It makes no sense. Anyways, at 3:50 p.m., 3 Cambodian civilians were walking along the embankment, the route where they usually commute. The Cambodian forces, unarmed and stationed in the area, were sitting near the above-mentioned location, approximately 10 meters from the civilians, to ensure the safety of Cambodian citizens. A moment later, they heard the sound of gunfire from the Thai side, which targeted 3 Cambodian civilians who were walking on the embankment, injuring 2 of the civilians. When our unarmed force intervened to rescue the civilians, they also became the target of the Thai attack. In addition, the Thai side expanded their scope of assault toward other targets where the innocent civilians were sitting nearby, resulting in 1 injury and 1 being killed immediately. At 4:20 p.m., the unprovoked use of violence by the Thai side ceased, at least according to the Cambodians, and then at 5:54 p.m., the Thai forces resumed the second round of assault with 5 shots of rifle gun toward the Cambodian forces. I've never heard of 5 shots of rifle gun before. That's news. However, the Cambodian forces did not retaliate at all, as they strictly adhered to the guidance principle of maintaining maximum restraint and fully respecting and implementing the ceasefire agreement. The joint declaration between Cambodia and Thailand, as well as all agreements previously reached by both parties, while firmly commit to resolving disputes through peaceful means in accordance with international law to ensure the safety of our civilians. So that is the statement from the Cambodians. One thing I gotta say that is a little bit odd about this story, and I gotta point this out here, is that the Cambodians are claiming that their soldiers that are on the border to protect the Cambodian civilians from outbreaks of violence by the Thai are supposedly, according to the Cambodians, unarmed. What type of army is that to be on border patrol with the country that you were just at war at? And although there is a peace treaty in place, you still were at war with them not too long ago, and supposedly all of your soldiers are unarmed, and the normal rules of engagement would dictate that if you are fired on, you can fire back in defense, and then the Cambodians are also claiming that their unarmed soldiers chose not to fire back, not because they didn't have guns, but because they wanted to ensure that the peace treaty remained in effect. All those standard rules of engagement for any country concerned would require that if you are fired on, you do have the responsibility to fire back in self-defense. So I'll be honest with y'all, I'm not trying to be biased here between the two sides because America really doesn't have a bone to pick with either of these countries, really, but the Cambodian story is not making any sense at all. This is one of the most propagandized stories that I've ever seen, at least in the fact that they are literally making it out to be the Cambodian armed forces are unarmed. that goes against the idea of them being the Cambodian armed forces. And also given the fact that in the prior engagement between the two sides, the Cambodians were the ones to instigate the conflict, and also were the ones who conducted endless barrages of civilians inside of Thailand. We have proof of that endlessly in video and picture evidence. So why in the world did the Cambodians go from blood-lusting warmongers of the Khmer Rouge to now they are peace-loving pacifists that don't even have an armed army? That doesn't really make any sense at all, I'll be honest with y'all. But
It sounds like bollocks to me. Honestly, I think the last time we saw this as well, I will say this, between the two countries, Cambodia or Thailand, Thailand's obviously the more Western-aligned country of the two of them right there. And also, I would say between the two, I think the U.S. would support Thailand like we discussed last time. So with this very sketchy statement coming out of Cambodia, I would say personally, this is very indicative that Cambodia probably is the one who's stirring the pot, as some are saying in the chat. It sounds like some probably are in Cambodia. So it seems like they want to fight. Like I said this about the Middle East situation as well. Like for example, with Israel and Gaza and the terrorist forces, they want to fight. The same thing with Cambodia and Thailand. They're wanting to fight. That's why they literally just halted the ceasefire agreement. They are not interested in actually bringing the thing to an end. There's a much deeper underlying issue that is not resolved, and they would rather fight it out than simply let it lie and rest, basically. So if they want to fight, it's going to happen. The U.S. can try to put an end to it, but it's only temporary at best.
Yeah, I would have to be honest with y'all here. This one is quite interesting to say the least, and I'll be honest with y'all. With the Cambodians lying this badly at this point, this is going to turn into a war. The Thai are not going to accept this, and they are going to, of course, start their airstrikes like they did last time after the Cambodians start larger conflicts along the border once more. Still, a lot of people are talking about this because this has been a significant upset, at least for the current U.S. foreign policy strategy, which is to force a ceasefire no matter what, and then try and broker a peace afterwards, or let the ceasefire completely collapse and then pretend like it never happened. So generally, Matthew, what are people thinking about that sort of foreign policy approach, at least in this instance, since this is the one that made it the farthest and it still failed, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So right now, the U.S. kind of does have pie on its face because the Cambodia-Thailand situation, there was a brokered ceasefire and a brokered peace agreement that was signed. I believe even the U.S. president attended, I believe he attended the signing, if I have that proper and if I have that correct. So yeah, he did attend the signing. So right now, this is somewhat embarrassing because like always, he kind of counted their chickens before their eggs hatched, basically. And we're back in the same boat where we are kind of getting embarrassed because the situation has fallen apart so bad that they've halted the ceasefire, and now they're back to fighting on the border, which is basically back to square one entirely after all that effort. So what happens now? 45% said the U.S. cannot broker a new peace, while 28% said it's a 50-50 chance of peace, and 16% said the U.S. can broker a new peace. And the peace that was brokered has been halted. It was halted by, I believe, both sides, and neither side is willing to agree to the ceasefire terms anymore. That's because both sides are accusing each other of causing new tensions and new escalations, and it's essentially out of control at this point. So the U.S. would be wise to take a step back and get out of this situation. It was great they attempted to bring it to an end, and it looked like they had for a minute. I was getting somewhat convinced that maybe I was wrong, and maybe they had brought it to an end, but you know, our initial assessment was correct. There's underlying issues here, underlying tensions between those two countries, and those have to be resolved first before there's an actual peace between these two nations. So I'm with the 46%. I don't think it's possible. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I'm with the 46%. The United States cannot broker a new peace between Thailand and Cambodia. I'll be entirely honest with y'all. I don't know why in the world we're acting like we have to go around and broker a peace everywhere on the planet. I don't really know if the president knows this, and I don't mean to say this in any sort of a way like we're chastising anyone here, but some people just want to kill each other, you know, like just being completely honest here. There are a lot of people in the world that got a bone to pick with each other, and they're not going to let that bone rest until the other one's dead. That's just the truth of it. Thailand and Cambodia is like any other country out there in the world right now. They have got bones to pick with each other, and they're not going to let that go until all of them are dead or until one of them wins completely over the other, and the other has no choice but to accept it. That's the only way that there's going to be a peace within this region. There's no way that the United States can come in and tell everyone to settle on down and get them into a negotiated ceasefire and then a peace treaty, because this is exactly what's going to happen. They still have a bone to pick. Even though they have a peace treaty, they still want to kill each other, and they're going to go to war. So it's going to happen anyways. I just don't know why in the world the president has this idea that coming in like Kylie Jenner with a Pepsi can and handing it to the riot police is going to end the riot or something. That's not how the world works. The world is a very nasty place, and foreign policy is a nasty business. Sometimes the best outcome is the worst outcome, at least from what people would think. The best thing, honestly, for these two countries to do is duke it out. And then at that point, we pick a side. That's really the only thing we have left at this point. We would obviously pick the Thai side. We want to be aligned with the Thai. They are largely purchasers of U.S. weapons, at least historically. And on top of that, they're also the more economically substantial country between the two. And not only that, they're more Western aligned than us. We just got to let them duke it out. The Thai will eventually take the prey of a hard temple, and the Cambodians will be forced to accept that. And then the conflict will generally end right then and there, or it'll restart again in the future because the Cambodians won't accept that they lost the temple and they'll start up the fight again to try and retake it. But there's really no way to end this thing because the fight here, like the fight right here between Thailand and Cambodia, it's the same fight that we see in the Middle East. Who in the world owns something? That's always the crux of the issue in Southeast Asia and also in the Middle East. Who in the world owns Israel? Is it the Palestinians? Is it the Israelis? Who is it? And the fights will keep going because both sides who claim that they own the area that Israel's in right now will still be alive well into the future. And they both want to still own that land. So they're going to keep fighting and dying for that land until the end of time, until one group or the other ceases to exist, or the other one of the groups is weakened so significantly they can't really fight any longer and they just have to give up. That's how it's going to be. There's really no other way for this to go. So I would say that the United States shouldn't even get involved in brokering a peace within this area. We ought to just let them go at it, back the side that we would naturally back, and then watch what happens. And if it goes our way, it goes our way, and if it doesn't go our way, well, that was unfortunate. But I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news that we have from around the world, which we still have quite a decent bit, especially from inside of Europe, which we're quickly going to be working our way back towards. But before we get on into all of that news, I do want to take a quick little moment to be able to speak to each of y'all, at least here for a second, and answer a couple of questions. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Also, by the way, I got to say, just a note for you, Enforcer, do not drink the coffee during the stream. That has been a huge mistake tonight. I've been struggling over here after drinking the coffee the entire stream. I've been sipping it throughout, in between not talking. Bad idea. Very bad. Not a good idea. I'm never doing that again. But jumping into our first super chat here, this one goes to none other than, guess who? It is Bobby, who's also known as LC39A. He puts a very generous $100 support yet again for the very, I think, like, I can't keep track of how many times it's been now, but thank you very much, Bobby, for that huge support once again, and once again, helping to keep us on the air in a massive big way. And Bobby said, everyone loves payday, and your payday is almost every day, LOL.
And I gotta say, Bobby, that is true because of folks like you. I gotta thank you massively for that support on Matthew and my behalf, because you help us to be able to keep our lights on and buy those, Matthew hit it, $5 Costco chickens. Man.
Oh, yes.
Man, I gotta be honest with you, Bobby. You're one of the folks who helps us to make that possible so that we can focus on this thing full time each and every single day. And I gotta thank you massively for your support tonight, because you're once again helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to keep this show on air so that way we can cover the news to 56,000 people within the first hour of the show, which is actually a large number of people. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on into that next one. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And also, what are you laughing at?
Also, by the way, I see people coming up with interesting theories here. I was actually being very PG about the coffee thing, by the way. I think people are reading way too deep into that. It's simply, when you drink coffee, it kind of dries your mouth out a little bit, so it's making it difficult to talk. And I'm sitting here like struggling, like I'm like, my mouth's dry. I'm sitting here like, what's going on? I'm like, the coffee. I'm sitting here sipping it. It's like zapping all the moisture out of my mouth. So I'm sitting here like smacking like a dusty air out here because of that coffee. So that's what I was talking about. Everybody's like reading way too deep into that. It's nothing like that at all, like in the live chat. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Daryl Barkhouse. And thank you very much, Daryl, for that very generous $75 support as well. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And Daryl said, are you fully unpacked in your new homes? And I can say for me, Daryl, I am fully unpacked. So And there I go with the dryness again. The coffee, dang it. But I am actually fully unpacked. And now I'm
Dang!
coughing too. I'm dying. I'm struggling. He's choking. He's a choke artist. He's struggling over there. Can you not get it out a little bit? I mean, come on. Do you not know what you're doing? But honestly, though, I'm fully unpacked. And also, I'm in the process of actually setting my place up with an actual sofa this time. Can you believe it? An actual sofa. Didn't have that before. We have that now. So I'm getting there. But thank you, Daryl. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you amazingly for the support, Daryl. And the answer is mostly yes and somewhat no. Pretty much everything that I need to be able to function on a day-to-day has been unpacked. But there are a small amount of items, one, that have to go over to Matthew's place eventually, because it's stuff I don't need for studio stuff. And two, some stuff hasn't been unpacked because it's just hobby stuff and it doesn't really matter too much to get it unpacked immediately. So mostly, pretty much everything's been unpacked, except for the hobby stuff, which is still sitting way downstairs and unpacked. So generally unpacked. But I got to thank you massively for that incredible support, and I'm on this channel to keep on running and asking a great question. I got to be honest with you. I got to be honest with y'all, folks. Salt Lake City is a step above Alabama by a long shot. You know something that's crazy, folks? When you drive around Salt Lake City, the streets are well paved, which is unheard of in Alabama. Like, that's not real. Another thing that's also really crazy about Salt Lake City is that there is a lot of stuff to do and see around here, which also was not the case in Alabama, unfortunately. And I gotta say this, folks, I gotta be honest with y'all, I really wish that Alabama was nicer. Like, I would be honest with y'all, I really don't have a bone to pick with Alabama. Alabama is actually a fairly pretty state, and I think that it's actually quite nice looking. The problem is, though, is that there's just nothing there. Like, it's basically like the local economy is mostly died off, and really the only thing left is the industrial side of things, but it isn't making enough money to carry the whole thing along, and that's kind of the problem. And I just wish that that would change, because honestly, I would most likely move back to Alabama if it had as much to do as Salt Lake City. Because Salt Lake City's got so much to do, folks. Like, I was looking around today in my free time while I was trying to run some errands to cook some food today, and I was just blown away with all the little malls that they have around here and all of the different stores, and pretty much every storefront is full, which is crazy. That's unheard of in Alabama, folks. Every single storefront in an open mall or a closed mall being full. That's not even heard of in Alabama. Like, most of them would be empty. And I was just like, that is crazy to see that there's enough business here to keep that going. So I just saw someone say it's the most boring place I've ever lived. Alabama or Utah? I'm curious. Like,
I think
which
we're
one?
talking about Utah. Honestly, I love it being boring personally because I mean the alternative was it's exciting and it's dangerous. And when you leave your house, you're not sure if you're going to make it back because you might get shot on the streets or something back in Alabama. So it's better to me having it boring. I would much rather have it boring and nice and calm than chaotic and crazy.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Like today, we actually rode the train a little ways to get somewhere, and it was really cool. Although, honestly, though, there was this one stop that we went to, and there was this guy who was hacking like he had gotten tuberculosis and he was dying out there, and that was a little bit something. But that was like the most wild thing of the day, and that in Alabama would have been nothing. Like, that would have been the smallest thing that happened in the day. Like, there would have been a lot of other crazy stuff that would have happened. So honestly, I'm really happy out here. I think this is a great place to be. And also, Nerdo said it's Alabama that's the most boring state. He said he loves Utah. So yeah, you know, like, honestly, like, I hate to say it because I have a decent amount of friends in Alabama, and we have a lot of friends that are still there. And they are great, wonderful folks. But then if you, like, once you get done working like we do every night, there's nothing to do. And that's just the saddest thing, because there's nothing to get out and really go see. There, you know, they're like, at least in Birmingham, Alabama, there was one road, which is Highway 280. And if you're not on Highway 280, there's literally nothing at all. So there was just that one highway, and that was it. And there was nothing else rather than fast food and car washes on that highway. So generally very happy with where we're at right now. But I gotta thank you so much once again for support, and we have generally unpacked, at least at this point. And so with that, it is time for us to move on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news for the night. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this one goes to none other than Hokey Redneck, and he puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Hokey, for that $50 support right there. And he said in the live chat, he said, Matt has 4 wives. And I said, I get no respect. I'm working on 5. Okay, I'm working on 5. But anyways, joking. But Hokie said, who has more oil? Is it Canada, Russia, or the United States?
It's actually the United States of America by far. The United States of America produces the most oil, and we also have the most crude oil in storage. So we are by far the oil kings of the world. And so I hope that does address that well. And a huge thanks to you once again for the support. And also, I got to say, folks, great question, by the way. I've actually been enjoying a great restaurant chain out here. Many of y'all may know it as Five Guys Burgers and Fries, but here in Salt Lake City, Utah, it's called Five Wives Burgers and Fries. And I honestly think that it's pretty bussin'. It's pretty good, honestly.
Damn, that's wild and right there. That's wild and now.
Yeah, you got to admit though, that was pretty smooth though. I mean, like it was seamless.
Man, that's wild and right there. I tell you, that's crazy talk.
But I gotta be honest with y'all. Five Wives Burgers and Fries is pretty good. I mean, like, you know, it's like Five Guys, just a different name. But no, all jokes aside though, Swig is something y'all got to try if y'all come out here. Like, I thought it was a joke. Like, before we went to it, I was like, you know, it's just some bogus about selling sodas. It actually is really good. Like, that is really, really good stuff. So if y'all ever come through the Salt Lake City area, y'all have got to come through and try out the Swigs. They're pretty cool. But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us to get on into the rest of the news. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support, Hokie Redneck, and helping this channel to keep on running, along with everyone else who is supporting this channel and going out of their way to. Nobody has to support the channel, but the folks who go out of their way to support the channel help us to make this thing possible and pretty much help us to be able to make a living doing this every day and focusing on this full time. And so with that, it's now time for us to get on into the rest of our news for the night. Moving on to the Republic of India, we have been able to hear of heavier air activity around the border with Pakistan, which is suggesting to us that air operations may be coming here within the future, and the tensions are of course rising between the two countries, most likely as a result of the New Delhi and Islamabad explosions, which happened one day after the other. Moving on out of that area and into the Islamic Republic of Iran, we have now been able to hear that Tehran's reservoirs are down to an estimated 9 days of drinking water. President Masoud Pezeshkian has warned that without rain, a full evacuation of the capital, home to 10 million people, may be necessary. So,
rumor has it that they've resorted to the old-fashioned rain dance to see if they can get the rain to come back again. But also, rumor has it that's not really working. But can you believe it that they're actually just 9 days out from having to evacuate the entire capital of Iran, Tehran? That's crazy. Like, I'm having a hard time processing that at all.
I'd have to be honest, it's really crazy that they are that close to just completely running out of water. But you know something else, Matthew? I've actually heard that there was a wise philosopher in Iran called Toto. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah, I think I've heard of him. I think that isn't that the fellow that went down in that helicopter crash? You know, helicopter.
No. That's the guy who actually said that it's not going to rain in Iran because the rains are down in Africa.
Oh,
you get it, right? Toto, the rains down in Africa, bless the rains in Africa, all that stuff, you know, like the song. Like
yeah.
Oh my God, it fell flat. Oh no! Oh no, man! At least some people in the chat got it. Some people got it in the chat. Thank God. Thank God. I thought I was going crazy there, folks. I thought that joke made no sense at all. Thank the Lord it made sense. But anyways, moving on from that, and now the Islamic Republic of Iran. I just got so scared that joke literally fell flat to everyone, Matthew. I was like, oh my God, no. I was like, I didn't just like flop a whole joke.
I'll be honest with you, when you were saying Toto the whole time, I was imagining like a toilet in my mind. When you're saying Toto, you know, like Toto toilets, I was imagining that. I was like, what's he like? Where's this going? Like, is he gonna make a bathroom joke? I'm like, where's this going? Oh, you're talking about the song though. You're talking about this. I'll be honest with you. I know I'm gonna get hate for this, but I've seen this song. I've seen the name. I don't know anything about this band. I don't know anything about the song. I don't know anything about anything.
Man, dang. But anyways, moving on from that and on up into the Turkish C-130J story, we were able to hear that the flight data recorders from the C-130 crash have been recovered today. So they're going to be getting to the bottom of why the crash occurred. Here is the clips that we did not show yesterday of the crash that occurred yesterday. Here's the clips. We can see what appears to be the main fuselage section venting fuel and spiraling in a flat spin to the ground, along with an additional fuselage section which is free falling over to the left.
That is crazy. I heard that they got the black boxes out of it at least.
Yes, they did. And we also got another clip here. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is a very good close-up, and we can see that the entire fuselage, except for the area near to the wing roots, has ripped off. And now let me show you all what I'm talking about here, at least from a top-down of a C-130. Top-down. Top view. There we go. That's what we're looking for. So this is a C-130 from a top-down view. Let me try and get the best-looking one that we can get. This is a decent enough approximation. So if you look at this, you can actually see here the main wing spars and wings are still connected along with all 4 engines, although one of them looks like they may be missing a propeller, but still, everything ahead of that and behind that, as far as the fuselage goes, is gone. We don't know what happened to those parts of the aircraft. It looks like at least some of it was free-falling off to the left, but we don't know why the fuselage disintegrated in flight, but the central area of the fuselage near to the wings remained intact. And we can also see that it is venting fuel out of the side of the wings as it's free-falling.
That's just crazy. Like, just looking at that footage there. To me, my hunch is still some type of shoot down. That's my hunch. I saw a lot of people speculating that maybe it was some type of poor maintenance or something that maybe caused the tail just to snap off. I just don't see that theory being true, though. I think it was shot down.
It's very mysterious, especially with how the plane broke up in flight like that. And now we can see the fuel explosion coming from the central area of the fuselage, which still had some fuel within it. But
some people were saying maybe there was an explosion on board. That's better. That's a better theory than just snapping apart, just randomly. That seems like it'd be a better theory right there. Well, and it was a military transport aircraft, so plausibly it could have been carrying things that were flammable or explosive since it was a military aircraft. So maybe something ignited inside and then maybe caused it to split apart. That would be more viable.
Possibly, but what is bizarre about it, though, is that the whole head end of the fuselage in front of the wings and everything behind the wings sheared clean off, while the fuselage around the wing spars remained intact, which is very bizarre looking. I just don't really know how it broke apart like that.
Yeah, I just don't get it. Like, it's very weird, very suspicious.
Yeah, it's just the wildest thing, honestly. Anyways, moving on from that bit of news and on into the rest of the news that we have from around the world, we've also been able to get some news out of Washington today, here in the United States. One, we have been able to hear that according to the Secretary of State, which we will not be able to play the clip, we'll just read the quote, the Chinese are undertaking the most rapid military buildup in human history, and part of that is their expansion of their nuclear capabilities. I think everybody's concerned about that. So generally showing that the United States is greatly concerned about the Chinese being an open risk and threat to national security for the United States. We've also been able to hear that U.S. troops are not liable in the deadly strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats in Latin America, a new classified Justice Department memo announced, according to the Washington Post. Moving on out of all that news here in the United States and back towards Europe, we have also been able to hear of an incident that occurred today on the SCNF, or the French National Railways. The French, much like many countries in Europe, actually operate a nationalized railway system. So in America, many of y'all will be familiar with the names like Union Pacific and CSX and Norfolk Southern and BNSF. And that doesn't exist in France, Germany, or many other countries in mainland Europe. They actually have a nationalized railroad company that does all passenger and freight operations. And in France, that would be SNCF. SNCF apparently had an incident that was reported last night just north of the Gare du Nord station within northern Paris, somewhere within the extensive rail yards north of the station. Apparently, a train carrying a convoy of Leclerc main battle tanks, pictured here, had a drone fly over it while it was near to the area. And apparently, the Mulhouse police station officers tried to track the device near the Gare du Nord where the tanks were parked. The drone remains unidentified and unfound, but the situation is once again another national security scare there for another European country on the mainland. Now, for this first time, the Republic of France. This is something that we don't really know how the French are going to react to it. We do know that many countries have stated that they will shoot down the drones when spotted, but none of them have shot them down so far. We are believing that the French may not be able to shoot the drone down because they haven't been able to find them. And also on top of that, the French may also have a greater issue in giving the orders to shoot down, as well as usually their rules of engagement, even in war, are fairly laborious and quite lengthy to follow through with to even get the orders to fire. So moving on from that situation and on out of France, we are now going to be moving on over and into because we have a load of news that came out of Russia today and Ukraine in the war in Ukraine. So without further ado, let's get into it. Bababoo. Moving on down into the border areas in the Belgorod Oblast, we were able to see an explosion in Belgorod at the village of Nikolskoye following a drone strike. Locals reported a powerful explosion just before the blaze, which would suggest that it may have been a munitions depot. The smoke is thick and black, however, which also would lead us to believe it may not be a munitions depot. But still, the fact that the civilians reported that it was an incredibly loud and violent explosion will lead us to believe that some form of munitions or fuel was stored within the area. Moving on out in Nikolskoye and Belgrade, and further on down the way, we also were able to hear of drone incursions here, there, and everywhere, as drone threats were reported in Belgrade, Voronezh, Lipetsk, Oriol, Tula, Kaluga, Ulyanovsk, Nizhny Novgorod, Penza, Saratov, Volgograd, Rostov regions, and the Republic of Mordovia, or as some people will call it, Mordor, from The Lord of the Rings, in the temporarily occupied Crimea, and in the Kuban. So basically everywhere. We also have been able to see additional reports and news of those attacks that happened, at least within the areas that the drone incursions had been reported in. We did get to see that an oil terminal was once again hit in Feodosia. Take a look at this. Look at that little explosion there.
That's a big one, actually.
It is quite a large one, but a little
jumbo.
But a little one in the sense that it's nostalgic. It reminds us of the good times in Feodosia. I gotta be honest with y'all, folks. The Russians just never have good days. They just never do.
It's a tough day to be a Russian. Honestly, it feels like it could be every day. It could be a tough day to be a Russian.
You know, I'll be honest with you, man. I think the Russians were having tough days before this war even started, just living in Russia.
Honestly, I think you could be right.
Man, honestly, what тогда? Man, what тогда, блин? But moving on out of that news from that area of Feodosia, and further on north into the port of Berdyansk within occupied Ukraine, we also got to see heavy air defense fire within this area. Take a look at that tracer fire. Oh! Oh, and also, take a look at this.
Просто тут прям перед окном тут только что ПВО рвануло.
Once again, more heavy air defense fire around Berdyansk.
Тут просто вот, видишь, сбивают просто. Сейчас Тёма заснимет, тебе передаст.
But that's the end of the clip right there. And still, quite interesting to note, it does appear that the Ukrainians are slamming those locations heavily. And also, I have to check this really quickly, folks, because I have been actually given a fair correction in the chat by a channel legend, Richard Minierin, who said that, to the Enforcer official, it was not in Paris, but at the Gare du Nord in Mulhouse, east of France, near the German border. And let me check that really quickly, because when I was trying to find the Gare du Nord, the only result I could find was in Paris, but I actually was seeing that that would be somewhat odd that that was the case. So let's see if we can find this, Gare du Nord, in Mulhouse. So let me, Gare du Nord, Mulhouse. Let's see if we can find that here. And is this near? This is near to the German border. I'm going to have to give an official retraction on air, and a huge shout out to Richard Minierin, who just helped us to be able to properly geolocate that. Apparently, it was not the Gare du Nord in Paris. It was actually the Gare du Nord here near Mulhouse in France, which I actually thought that Mulhouse was a specific arrondissement of Paris when I was trying to research that earlier. So a huge thanks and shout out to Richard Minierin, and I'll also have to give an official retraction, because it actually appears that that incident occurred near to this rail yard yard right here within the Gare du Nord in Mulhouse, near to the German-French border, or the Franco-German border, better way to put it. So with that, we are going to be moving on. Once again, huge shout out to Richard Urine for fact-checking us live on air so we can clarify that mistake that was made earlier in the stream. And moving on from that and out of the attacks that the Ukrainians conducted on the Russians within the south, we now have to move up to Bryansk, to where we also were able to see Russian logistics getting hit within the area. Take a little look.
Did you see that half wolf man, half cyborg thing at the beginning right there? That was impressive. Look at that. Look at that thing. Half wolf, half demented wolf, half a skull man wearing nods. That's a very wealthy skull man to be having those nods like that.
You best start living in believing in a retirement fund, boy. You're in one. The night vision like that, the nods can pretty much be a retirement fund in their own way.
Basically, yeah. Oops.
Man, le oopsie daisy.
And look at this. This vehicle didn't stand a chance. And look at this vehicle. This vehicle here is casually driving down the road, but little do they know that they got caught lacking in 260p.
Man, look at that.
Oh, that thing's literally burned to a crisp. Look, it's just a shell left, a metal shell.
Man, a little cooked out van. Man, that thing is cooked, blood. We can also see them here hitting a little truck with a deflated tire. And now they're flying it over, getting a little victory lap here.
You know, could you imagine if the Russians had a proper budget and a proper research department, if they could come up with a viable way to either jam, destroy, or deflect these Ukrainian drones with some type of electronic warfare system, the Ukrainians would be in some deep trouble if they were able to do that. They better be very thankful the Russians are broke and they don't have any really good engineers on the job, basically, because if there was any country out there that came up with a proper, real, concrete solution to repel drones, the main way Ukraine launches their attacks against the Russians when they're advancing is with drones, and that would extremely badly hamper the Ukrainians a lot.
Man, it would. Thank God the Russians are broke ass poor.
Honestly, man, thankful that they're broke.
Man, and we can see another drone coming down on that Lada Niva. You can always tell a Lada Niva because they're the hatchback ones. You now see them hitting another one. And also I saw Tom Exman say they had, Matt. Both sides now use fiber optics. Fiber optics are only used in limited scenarios. Still, we commonly see that the wireless connection drones are fairly used, heavily as a matter of fact, and fiber optics are used a good amount, and of course the videos of the fiber optic cables scattered all across the fields would make you believe that it's the only drone used. But generally, for maneuverability reasons, the non-fiber optic drones are still used as the large majority of drones in the war.
Yeah, I think most of these we're watching the video here. I think most of these are the wireless type because if you notice at the top left corner, I think that's the signal or the connection data up there at the top left.
Well, you can also tell that they're non-fiber optic type because these are losing signal as they're getting closer to the ground, which is showing that it's a wireless connection, as fiber optic drones are never affected by altitude.
Indeed.
Oh, wait a minute. Did you see that? Dude, that little drone was hanging on there. Look at that. Bro, look at that thing. That one apparently failed. They tried to blow it up and it didn't explode, so they sent a second one to go blow it up.
That's what I call finishing the job right.
Man, and now they're going on down on a Buhanka to round this whole thing out. A great way to finish this thing up. Well, moving on from that and on into the rest of our news for the night and on down into the Ukrainian front lines, we were able to see some very interesting location unknowns. First, we were able to hear that Ukraine is apparently going to be deploying the world's first drone wall, an innovative air defense system developed by the French company Atrid. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, I know I'm not. It consists of dozens of small drones that create a flying minefield in the sky to destroy enemy kamikaze drones, and in the future, even aerial guided bombs. Now that is innovation, if I've ever heard of it. And from the French, nonetheless. That's really something right there. Huge shout out to the French for coming up with a really interesting weapon system. Moving on from that, we also get to see the Ukrainians shooting down a Shahed with class with an M134 minigun. This is something you don't commonly see out there. I think you got him.
Damn. I feel like Vietnam, like coming on or something like that. Yeah, don't you?
Honestly, man, this felt like World War One to me, man. This looked like a view of like one of those BEA 5s doing like the the Airco DH1s, like in the dog. I got to show you what I'm talking about there. The Airco DH1. Yeah, there it is. This thing. The Airco. Let me see if I can get a clearer picture of a replica or something. Because
They had a minigun on this thing.
they didn't have a minigun, but the POV felt like it was from an Airco. So what this thing is, here's a colorized picture of it. What this thing was, it was a pusher plane, meaning that the propeller was in a pusher configuration instead of a pulling configuration. So what they would do is that they would give the front co-pilot here, which was in the front seat, they would give him a machine gun on a swivel, on a mount, and he would be able to engage German aircraft at pretty much any angle. This was a very early war biplane, by the way. These were replaced towards the end of 1915, but they were really cool. And honestly, this view right here, man, looking at it from the side, like for some reason to me, man, it made me think of like one of those like the gunners on an Airco, and he like swiveled the machine gun to look to the left of the plane, and he just started shooting at the Shahed. That's what I was thinking of, honestly.
This would be a perfect video right here for that Vietnam era song, the one about the senator's son or whatever, to come on the video. That would be like a perfect track for this one.
You mean the son of the fortunate?
That could be it. Yeah, yeah. I think that is it.
It's Fortunate Son. I was playing around with you. The son of the fortunate. It's Fortunate Son, but that's the one. But still. I mean, that's just wild, just unloading into a Shahed with a minigun. That's actually pretty cool. But moving on from that and Snoopy's adventures in the Red Baron, we also were able to see the Russian casualty report over the course of the day, which was graciously given to us by Miss Disa, keeper of the records, as Kyiv Independent did not publish their own individual casualty report today. According to Miss Disa, keeper of the records, these are estimates of Russia's combat losses according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine as of the 12th of November of 2025, day 1,358. Except for tanks, these are close to the current daily averages. And +1 Bombcat for Enforcer Matt.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this gift, Ukraine. I thank you so much for this gift. This is a fantastic day for us all. Thank you so much, Ukraine, for coming through and hitting one more Bobcat, one more skid steer, one more piece of equipment. Thank you so much.
Look, Jack, you gotta understand. When they hit those Bobcats, they cause a lot of damage. They really hurt. They go, ouch, stop hitting me. And then they get hit again. But anyways, beyond that, the casualty report of the day is as follows. 1,000 troops wounded and killed, 3 armored personnel carriers, 13 artillery pieces, 1 MLRS, 1 air defense system, 162 drones, 87 supply trucks, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, it was a pretty decent day, and we love to see it. Moving on from that, and on into the front lines. It's now time for us to get to the business. First off, up in the area of Kupiansk, we were able to see the Ukrainians taking out the boats that the Russians are using to cross the Oskol River. Oh, those Russians trying to cross that Oskol.
Are you saying Oscar?
Oskol.
Oskol?
Yeah, Oskol with an L.
I was about to say Oscar seemed like an odd name for a river for this region.
Man, honestly, that would be kind of weird to have a river just named Oscar. That's like naming a river Jim.
He's dead, Jim.
Damn it, Jim, I'm a river and not a creek. Or something. And, oh, man. Captain, I'm giving it ouchie, Scott. My acting skills aren't that great. Or something. And, man, and then
yeah, something, you Spock.
Okay, you almost walked yourself right in. Then you walked right out. I was about to be like, whoa, Jack, whoa. But
man, they were getting crazy on Spock. I'm not gonna lie. Like I know it was just obviously it was cartoon fun, but I mean they were going crazy on Spock. I mean there was some real problem going on there.
Man, honestly, man, I got to be honest with y'all. When y'all watch the original series over again after the first watch, I didn't really realize it when I was a kid, but really no one on there had good acting skills, to be entirely honest with y'all. Like, it felt like amateur hour. Like, the Next Generation was the real deal. Everyone on the Next Generation seemed to be really good actors, at least in my opinion. The original series was pretty sketchy at times. Like, they really were just like reading the lines and putting no acting into it at all. But anyways, moving on from that and down in the Lehman direction, we also get to see the 8th Special Operations Forces Regiment infiltrating the Russian lines and clearing them out. You can hear the sound of nature. Oh, is that the crack of rifle fire? Oh, is that an explosion? Oh, is that machine gun fire? Are they clearing out Russian positions? Oh, they are! Oh, a little grenade went off right over there. Oh, they're going in!
Hot smoking like hell in there.
Man, they call this bunker Mark Zuckerberg because they're smoking them ribs, I tell you. They're plugging the merch.
Oh, look. They found
a passport, a Bible, a Baofeng, and a letter.
Yeah, that's a real big find right there. Big catch.
Man, that was a big haul, but it did confirm that Russians were in the outpost. Well, big shout out to the 8th SOF Regiment. They did great work today in the Lehman front. And moving on from that area and on down into the Battle of Pokrovsk, which is where pretty much all of our combat footage is coming from these days, we were able to see some Akhmat Chechens driving down the road. Safety challenge impossible.
Are those mines?
Yes.
Oh
TM62s to be precise. You know the firepower of a single TM62, don't you? I mean, we've watched them go. There's a dozen of them here in this one spot. So, if they fall off the motorcycle or accidentally run over one of these, they're going to be in they're going to be in whatever version of the afterlife they've got. So there they go, driving right through them.
The modern day Chechen evil.
I don't even know how it happens, but the Chechens somehow can make every single thing unsafe, including driving down a street with a motorcycle. I don't know how they always do it, but it's like the Akhmat Chechens are like the lemmings of Russia. They find a way to die in the dumbest of ways, and they almost died here. But moving on out of that clip and on up into the areas closer to the front, we did get to see some Russian trucks getting hit by the Fighting 93rds FPV drones. Take a little gander at this. Is that a motorcycle? Oh, is that a moped?
Like oh, very unfortunate. It looks like this thing was waiting on this guy.
Very unfortunate for sure. Oh man, it's picking up speed. Ooh, oh my goodness. And now they're doing a rapid montage. What is that? Oh, it was a BTR.
Oh, it looked like a thing for a minute.
Man, honestly, I was like, what in the world? But moving on from that clip from the rear line, now it's time for us to get on up towards the front. We did get to see the hold up here. Oh, that's a duplicate. Sorry, everyone. We'll have to delete that. That's actually from Lehman. Moving on down into the city of Pokrovsk, we did get to see the 425th Scala Regiment doing a little bit of building clearing within the north of Pokrovsk. Take a little look. Oh, we're going to have to mute that.
They call him a Scala because he got that brain.
Man, they call him a Scala because they about to scald the Russians' ass. Man, like, honestly, like, respectfully.
They're taking the Russians to the clinic today.
Man, they about to give the Russians that chopped cheese.
He said, look here, you can see that we're taking them out one by one. Here, take a look. Look at this.
He's like, look. Take a look. Look at it! Look at it!
I think this guy's trying to compete for Medyar's spot.
He needs a car antenna. Like, he needs a car antenna for that one.
He'll have to use something different. He'll have to get like a stick of dynamite and point at the screen with it or something. That'll like raise your XP a little bit.
Oh, this guy is trash talking the Russians on the mic. He's like, hold up, let me get back to that. He's like, hey dude, your mom is like stupid and fat or something like that. The Russians are like, not my mama, like, dude, and then they hit him with a drone strike. Oh my goodness,
Man, you're not gonna talk about my mama.
man, I remember Pacific Ocean, man. He went off about that, about the Keebler elf talking about his mom. That is a very deeply ingrained inside joke that Matthew and me have from middle school, folks. If you don't know who Keebler elf and Pacific Ocean are, that is a story for a whole other time. But we can see the 425th Scala here continuing to do their work.
You know what's wild about the young men out there that will say, you're not going to talk about my mama? Is they'll be the exact same ones that go home and cuss their mama out that same day. But dang it, you better not talk about their mama.
Man, honestly, man, that's deep. Man, it's the problem with the youths these days, honestly, man. I mean, it's crazy, man, for real.
Look at these Ukrainians creeping. Look at them.
Man, the guys in the Scholar are like, this is another Wednesday for us. We was clearing them out like it was no one's business.
Man, they're moving like they got that motion like scholars out here. Look at them, the way they academically enter that building and you know, score on those Russians.
Oh, look, there's a Russian. Oh, Blad! This guy's on the intercom with him going, hey, you suck, why don't you get good? He's like, no, your mama! Like, man, and then the Ukrainians hit him with a grenade.
Ukrainians are going to give him that pop quiz on the spot.
Oh, here comes the Ukrainians. They're coming in to put in the work.
There's the scholars. Look at that other guy chugging
Dang,
that.
he was chugging
Damn,
that Red
bro,
Bull.
He's chugging that Red Bull.
My
God.
God.
He wasn't playing. He just up that thing. He just, dang. Look, he's wiping it off. He's scratching. He's got
Man.
the caffeine scratches.
Man, minus 2 years on his life expectancy from that much caffeine in 2 seconds. Jeez.
Man, bottoms up. Jeez, he started scratching. Like, so I tell you what, I've seen people scratching like that before. They was on something different, though. It wasn't caffeine.
Man, honestly, that's real. Like, that's real. Oh, and the Russian, he's still there. He's still there. Oh, and they got him. Oh, and the second one went in. And then they gave their post-game report. They said things went well. You know, all that business. But anyways, with that, that's the end of that clip. And moving a little bit further on up into the area outside of Pokrovsk for the Ukrainians trying to get into the city, this guy engaged a Russian drone and took it down. Riding in on that ATV. Oh, it looks
This
like
is
you
the
might
Ukrainians, right?
Yeah, this is the Ukrainians.
I'm about to say, this is way too nice of an ATV side by side for the Russians to have it.
Dude, honestly, man, the Russians couldn't even comprehend something like this. The only thing they get are those Desert Cross, Baofeng, little ATVs, and that's it. And now this guy, he's getting ready to grease a drone. Oh, and there we go, he got it.
That's impressive. Well, the
And now
red
he's-
dot.
Yeah, and he's back on the way. Like, he immediately starts moving again.
He's like on a shotgun skeet course or something. The way he's driving around and taking these things down. Oh, look, he just drove right past it too.
Man, he styled on that thing. He said, get the hell out of here, trash. And then he just drove right by it. But moving on from that clip and on out of the area of Pokrovsk, the battlefield situation today, folks, is practically the same as it was yesterday. So there isn't really a lot of frontline analysis needed there. Situation is the same as it was before. But moving on from that and on up into the area of northwestern Ukraine, we have been able to see that the Ukrainians have been fortifying the Rivne nuclear power plant with a second layer of protection, as they are starting to become concerned that the Russian Federation may possibly launch an attack against the Rivne nuclear power plant. This has led a lot of people.
That is fascinating that they're deciding to fortify this specific nuclear plant.
Yeah, that is a little bit odd. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, actually?
So right now, like we did see there in the video, Ukraine has begun preparing the Rivne nuclear power plant for possible strikes. So might Russia actually hit it? Because it seems like Ukraine believes something might be about to happen, but once again, we have very little details on it. So 67% said yes, Ukraine must know something's about to happen in that nuclear plant, while 15% said no, Ukraine is simply adding defenses, and 12% said it seems like a 50-50 chance that Russia could target the plant. So honestly, I'll say this. If Russia was going to do something to a nuclear plant, they have the Zaporizhzhia plant under their control. So they could stage something there if they were going to try to do something. So I'm not sure why Ukraine's suddenly preparing the Rivne plant for strikes. It seems like Ukraine might know something, but it's just simply, we don't have enough information. Right now, we're just going off of what we're hearing, and that's pretty much it. We have no extra information to say exactly what's happening. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm with the 67%. I would have to say the Ukrainians must know something is up, because why in the world would they fortify that nuclear power plant out of all of the others? That would be quite interesting, to say the least. I also have to give you all a little bit of breaking news myself, folks. I hate to tell you all this for our American viewers, but today is the day that the penny has died. Today is the last day that the penny is going to be minted at the U.S. Bureau of Printing and Engraving, and from this point forward, there will be no more pennies that will be minted for circulation in the United States of America, or anywhere for that matter. So, unfortunately, that just happened. I just saw that a second ago while Matthew was talking, and I gotta say, Matthew, I didn't really expect that one to come around the corner, did you?
No, I was expecting that one right there. You can expect more forms of currency probably to go by the wayside like that, as the U.S. probably makes a move to digital, I'd imagine.
I got to be honest with you, I think that that's absolutely ridiculous. It costs 4 cents to make a penny, but at the same time, I like the idea of keeping the penny around. But unfortunately, the penny just died. So the penny has been in circulation practically ever since we had standardized currency within the United States, which happened around the middle of the 1800s. And now we have officially killed off the penny as of today, this Wednesday, November 12th of 2025. So, with that, it is time for us to move on up into Kyiv on that unfortunate news and cover the speech from the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this day of the war. So, without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні детально говорив з прем'єр-міністром України Юлією Свириденко. Перше, повинна бути максимальна чистота в енергетиці всіх процесів абсолютно, і кожне розслідування правоохоронців, антикорупціонерів я підтримую. Ми підтримуємо. І це абсолютно чітка та однакова для всіх позиція. Жодних схем. І добре, що Кабінет міністрів України надаватиме повне сприяння слідству і всім процесуальним судовим діям. Буде очищення та перезавантаження управління енергоатомом. Друге, я вважаю, що міністр юстиції та міністр енергетики не можуть залишатися на посадах. Це питання, зокрема, і довіри. Якщо є звинувачення, на них треба відповідати. Рішення про відсторонення від посади оперативне, найбільш швидке. Я попросив прем'єр-міністра України, щоб були заяви про відставку від цих міністрів. Я прошу депутатів Верховної Ради підтримати ці заяви. І далі все має вирішуватись в юридичній площині. Третє, буде рішення РНБО щодо санкцій за поданням Кабінету міністрів України. І зараз всім в Україні надзвичайно складно проходити через відключення електрики, руські удари, втрати. Абсолютно ненормально, що при цьому в енергетиці ще якісь там є схеми. Я підпишу указ про застосування санкцій проти 2 людей, які фігурують у справі НАБУ щодо енергоатому. Зараз нам всім треба захистити Україну. Підставляти державу – значить відповідати за це. Порушувати закон – значить відповідати за це. Я хочу подякувати всім, хто з Україною. Я дякую всім, хто захищає нашу державу і українців. Слава Україні!
And
Героям слава!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1357 of the news from around the world. And it is time for us to move on, folks, into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. Some folks say that we wine and dine in this segment. Other people say that it's a penny for your thoughts. we'll have to retire that statement because there are no more pennies left in America. And of course, get ready, folks, to have fun with your 50-year mortgages and your 7-year car loan installments, because it's only getting better from here, folks. But beyond that, it is time for us to get on into the question segment where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, is it a blast. We get to talk about literally anything and everything, except for religion, politics, climate change, or whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare. We get to talk about literally anything else but those 4 things. Those 4 things. That's all, folks. That's all. We just those 4 things we can't talk about. Everything else is on the menu. But Matthew, without further ado, what do we got?
All right, so it's now time for the most coveted section of the stream, the final question segment of the night, and we have a lot of good questions to get to in this segment. So let's jump right into it. Our first one here goes to none other than KG, and KG puts in a very generous $50 support. And we appreciate you very much, KG, for that very generous support right there, and also helping to keep the channel running, and also putting that toward the 50-year mortgage fund. But KG said, China is supporting Russia and needs Russia to distract, and China nationals are pouring billions into Russian companies via bonds right now. KG, I agree with you. That is my point I was trying to make earlier. China, in my opinion, like we were debating earlier, is definitely supporting Russia, and Russia is not only a distraction for China, it's also their only real ally that is even close to being China's peer. So they have to have Russia. If they don't have Russia, they literally have nobody except for a very loose coalition of rinky-dink countries like Iran and North Korea, which are extremely volatile. So they have to have Russia. As much as Russia is weak, they are necessary to China in the event of a geopolitical upheaval, like, for example, World War III. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I see where you're coming from with that, and that probably is the case, but still, the Russian economy can only hang on for so long, and I think that they are doomed to fail at this point because there really is no other way around it. I mean, we've been watching the Russian economy go through the process of failure for the entire course of this year, and so it'd be really weird for that to just reverse and for them to stabilize at this point, literally on the very verge of complete collapse. But I do see what you're saying, though, and I do think that that's prolonged the Russian Federation's ability to survive for a little bit. But even still, I think that their ability to survive is going to be not used up by this point, in my opinion. So big thanks to you for the support, KG, the massive support, and helping this channel to keep on running. But I just don't think that the Russians can keep rolling for much longer. Whether the Chinese want them to be around or not, it's not really up to the Chinese, it's up to the Russians, and they already dug their own grave, and they're dying in it right now. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the next one. And also I see some people saying, the enforcer's name is Andrew? Yeah, my name's Andrew, but everyone calls me the enforcer. It's gotten to the point that I just kind of view myself as the enforcer and hardly Andrew. A lot of my friends call me the enforcer because they know another Andrew and they don't want to get the other Andrew mistaken for me, and I'm just known as the enforcer, so they call me the enforcer. So generally, it's really more so these days the enforcer than Andrew, but my actual name is Andrew. I do have a name! But anyway, so that we are on to the next one.
All right. Also, by the way, like, not to get political here, by the way, don't take this political, folks. It doesn't matter who's saying it. It's just the concept of it in general. Can y'all believe a 50-year mortgage? Like, that's insane to me. Like, the fact that a 50-year mortgage is actually a concept being considered by literally anybody. Get this, folks. If right now the average home buyer is, I think right now the average home buyer's age is 60 years old. That's the median home buyer right now, which is absurd that that's the average age of a home buyer. It should be more like 30, but it's 60. So that's messed up in the first place. But imagine you're able to somehow afford a down payment at like 30 years old, which these days that's a bit of a feat to afford a proper down payment at 30 because houses have gotten so expensive. But imagine at 30, you put a down payment on there, you get the 50-year mortgage. Most likely, you'll be dead by the time you ever come around to paying that mortgage. You won't pay it off during your lifetime, most likely, because 30 plus 50, what are we sitting at, Enforcer? We're sitting at what, about 70 or 80 years old at that point? What's the math?
Something like that, yeah. It would be around there.
Yeah, something like that. Most people will have passed on by then, according to the lifespan in the country. So you won't even have your house paid off during your lifetime. You're essentially renting your house from the bank at that point, which is insane. 30-year mortgages used to be considered, oh, wow, a 30-year mortgage, that's a long time. That used to be considered a long mortgage. 50 is crazy. Like, that's crazy work.
I'm gonna be honest with y'all. It's a little bit insulting. On top of that, when someone then also sits there and says that the economy is the greatest it's ever been, but it's like, really? It's like, are we going to really go around and try and kid people into thinking that? Like, it's like, I guess it's been completely abandoned, the concept of actually fixing the issue. We're just going to lie to people now and tell them that it's never been better, and we're just going to go with that. Because I remember back, like, just to be honest with y'all here, I just remember last year before the new administration came into being, and we were already saying the economy's looking really rough, and it's getting a little bit rougher. And then the new guy comes in saying he's going to fix it all, and then he just abandons that within 10 months. And now he's telling everyone that the economy's fixed, it's never been better, and anyone who's saying that it isn't is just a liar. It's like, if the economy was doing great, there would be no such thing as the concept of a 50-year mortgage and an 8-year car loan installment. Like, that just wouldn't exist, you know? And then on top of that, you don't, like, I don't even have to argue this. You literally can go to the grocery store and the gas pump and everywhere else and literally see it. Are we just gonna live in denial now and pretend like the economy is better than it's ever been now, or are you actually gonna say that it's got issues and trying to work towards fixing them at some point?
Yeah.
That's
And also think about this as well. If you give out 50-year mortgages and make that a thing, that's going to spur more house sales. What's happening right now? Houses are overpriced like crazy right now. The housing market is out of control like wild. You're paying upwards of a million plus for like a 3,000 square foot house these days. That's how crazy prices are getting in some places. Now, some places houses are a little bit cheaper than that. And when I say cheaper, that's still not cheap. But it's wild to me to think the houses are upwards of $1 million for 3,000 square feet. If you give out 50-year mortgages, that means more people are going to start buying those homes, which naturally the greedy companies building them are going to raise the prices even further on those houses because now they realize, oh, look, people can now afford these overpriced houses because they have the 50-year mortgage with lower payments. And they're going to very stupidly take that payment on, even though they shouldn't. And the companies are going to raise the prices, the builders are. Therefore, you're a dog chasing its tail at that point. You're not fixing a problem, you're just sending it around in circles.
it's just incredibly annoying, folks. And what is crazy is that some regulation would fix a lot of this, and no one's willing to dedicate themselves to just implementing additional regulation. Like, for example, the idea of singular companies buying up giant swaths of new houses and then only renting them, which forces the market for the houses for sale to rapidly skyrocket because the supply of houses for sale is remaining the same while the population is growing. And then the amount of rentals is rising, but those companies can sit on a rental for years because they make enough profits to be able to do that until someone's willing to pay that rent. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous at this point. We could easily, like, it's literally, we could fix this whole thing with a stroke of a pen. No joke, we could. And no one wants to. In any regard at all. Like, for example, we could easily fix the issue of the prices of groceries by telling the FDA and the Department of Agriculture to give out less burn orders for crops, where the crops are to be ordered to be destroyed or not even planted. We could just allow for a smaller surplus of crops to be introduced every single season. And that would start to slowly lower the price of the goods by a little bit, at least the groceries to some degree. That would be easy. All these sorts of issues, I mean, like, they are wildly easy to fix. They on a governmental and administrative level.
I would disagree with that. I would say it's extremely complicated to fix. But at the same time, though, it's not a good way to fix it by making a 50-year mortgage. That's like a cheapskate's way of fixing it. That's not a proper way to fix it. There's a way to fix it. It's going to take a lot of thinking, a lot of great minds on it to actually get it fixed, and also real effort behind it, not these band-aids they keep throwing on the problem. But they got to think it through. But it's so troublesome. And also, you got to remember, folks, us as Americans, we're untalented. You have to remember that too. We're completely untalented, and we have to bring our talent from overseas because we're too stupid to work for our own companies. We have to bring in H-1B visa people to work our jobs because we're too stupid for that. That's where we're at. And also, we can't afford our house either.
I'm just saying this, folks. I'm not trying to get political here, but I do find this kind of weird. I kind of find it weird that someone can say in an election that people are coming from all across the seas, crossing the border, and so on and so forth, and they're stealing jobs from Americans. And then today you get told by the same guy after he, was elected off of that idea. Then you get told by the same guy that, as a matter of fact, Americans are just too dumb and stupid and they're drooling, sniveling idiots, and that's why we got to import everyone from around the world to take your jobs because you're just too stupid to have one. Like, I just got to say, I'm not going to get political here whether I agreed or disagree with the original policy, but that's pretty damn insulting to tell the population of your own republic that they're too damn stupid to even hold a job in their own country. Like that, I gotta be honest with y'all, that is quite aggravating. I'm not gonna lie, because I know a lot of people out there right now, folks, I personally know, that have bachelor degrees, and some of them have doctorates, and none of them are able to get jobs. Overqualified at this point for any job. And for some reason, they can't get one. And then they're also told that they're too stupid to have one, although they're overqualified for really any job they want at this point.
Yeah, honestly, it irritates me so bad. I just realized I kind of broke the no politics rule there a little bit, so big whoops on that one. But honestly, it does irritate me a lot. Like, I'm not even trying to say this side, that side, or another. It's just irritating to hear all these different things. You know why? I think why it irritates me so much is because it affects everybody. It does affect everyone. I'm not going to pretend it's limited to one group it's affecting, but it's slamming like our age group tremendously bad. Like the young people that are coming out of university trying to look for jobs, it's slamming them the hardest. People that are trying to get ahead, like for example, we diligently work on this channel day in and day out. It's just a rut. Like they're creating a rut for people in our age group that we really just can't dig our way out of anymore, no matter how hard you try. That's not a hopeless mindset. I'm simply saying that because to fix a problem, you got to recognize reality first. If you're in a rut, the rut needs to be fixed. You need to fill that rut in to fix it. But unless people recognize the problem, then the rut's never going to get fixed. It's never going to get fixed. And right now, nobody wants to recognize the problem. Nobody does. Like everybody wants to keep passing the buck. It's this side. It's that side. It's like, forget about the side. Just come up with a solution. It's like, forget about all this junk y'all keep doing with your political games. Figure out the solutions. That way the young people literally don't collapse as a generation.
And I'll tell you something else. This is something that you won't hear from any of the fools in Washington. I'll tell you all this right here, right now. The citizens of this republic are some of the brightest, most genius, hard-working, back-breaking people that exist on this planet. Truly are. From Alabama to Utah to California to New York and everywhere in between. I do not like the idea of sitting there and telling people that they're too stupid to get a job in their own country. That is the most insulting and disingenuous statement that the leader of the republic could ever make. That is something that is so insulting to me. I can't even not say how insulting that is, knowing how many people, how many of my folks in my generation are dying to get any job at this point, and they're stuck working at McDonald's with bachelor's and doctorate's degrees, buried up to their necks in debt for a job that they're now being told they're too stupid and underqualified to get when they're well overqualified to, and if you gave them the chance, they'd work their ass off for whatever job they got that they were qualified for and make a good living, and not only that, help that company to make a good honest dollar. That's absolutely ridiculous. And that was said in the last administration, that was said in this administration. I'll be honest with y'all, one of the biggest enemies to this republic and this nation these days, and the morale and the well-being of our citizenry, are the very leadership that they elect that will sit there and spit in their face and tell them that they're too stupid to hold the job that they have a degree for. That is absolutely stupid. I don't even understand why in the world people would say that to the very citizens of the country that they are the elected representative of. That is just stupid. I can't even wrap my mind around it, folks. And I'm not trying to be political here, but those types of statements really they piss me off. They really do. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into the question. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so back to our next super chat. This one goes to Sam Temporary, and he puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Sam, for that $50 support as well.
Hey!
And I think that might be one of your first ever supports on the channel. I was going back to check real quick, and I was trying to do some quick looking, and I think it is, unless I'm not recognizing your username because YouTube changed it around. So a big thank you for that support, by the way. And Sam said, here's my prediction. A Black Swan event, and Russia launches a massive surprise Western drive from Belarus and takes Warsaw, Berlin, and Paris before Russian resources run out, and think Battle of the Bulge, and don't take the cities, surround and bypass.
And that he's saying that's the Russian plan?
I think so, yeah.
I would heavily doubt that they would ever make it past Warsaw. I mean, if they making it to Paris would be impossible. I mean, they can't even make it to Kyiv. So launching a surprise attack where they make it all the way across continental Europe to Paris, that would be way out of Russia's wheelhouse. I mean, hell, they're fighting for a town with a population of 70,000 people right now, and they've been doing that for a year, and they've lost 30,000 men trying to take it. I'd highly doubt that they could even make it across the Polish border without getting about half of everyone in the Russian army killed. I mean, hell, the Polish are no joke. I mean, really, honestly, the Russians have got to beat the boss battle pretty much to even get past Poland. I mean, Poland has the largest ground army, the largest army, military really, in the whole of Europe right now on land. They would have to battle through tooth and nail the whole of Poland. They can't even get through 20% of Ukraine to even make it to Berlin, like to even think about making it to Berlin. I don't think that would be within the realm of possibility for them. They just don't have the logistical abilities. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the funding, and they also just don't have the military oversight and genius to be able to do a strategy like that either. Maybe the Germans could have done that in the Second World War, and they did, but they failed pretty quickly a couple of years later on actually holding it down. But the Russians in the modern day, they would be far pressed to really even fight the Baltic side, in my honest opinion at this point. The Baltics could give them a run for their money single-handedly, probably. But huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. But while I will say that the Russians are not a big threat, I would also say not to underestimate them, but at the same time, I would never believe that they could even make it to Warsaw, honestly, in Poland. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Lego Joe. And thank you very much, Lego Joe, for that $50 support as well. Also extremely generous, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And Lego Joe said, today's generation doesn't care about how much it costs. As long as their paycheck covers every monthly payment, it's fine. And same goes for cars. Savings, what's that? And don't get me started on credit card debt, LOL. Honestly, Lego Joe, I'll tell you this. I'm not going to put my whole finances out there on display, but me personally, I live extremely lean, very lean. I do actually think about retirement for myself personally, and I'm trying to do it the right way. All these financial, like I guess you say, financial advice classes and things like that. I actually took some classes in college, which was sort of about finances and retirement and planning and things like that. So I try to actually adhere to that. But the problem is this, though. If you look a little bit deeper into it and you really look at it, the rate of inflation that's currently taking place is going to eat up most savings that you put into a savings account. So obviously in a savings account, you make interest, but the interest rates are not fantastic. I think right now it's hovering around like 3.4, 3.5% in a high yield savings, but the inflation rate is also pretty high. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it eats a lot of your interest away. So essentially, when your money is sitting there in your savings account, you're either holding steady and the interest is kind of balancing out the inflation, or you're actually dipping into the negative and you're losing some of your buying power because inflation's eating up your interest. So I will agree with you. There are some young people that are actually out of touch. They're really out of touch. There are some young people that will go and overextend themselves. They go into extreme debt so they can try to live like a very wild, like social media lifestyle. But that's not everybody. A lot of young people, especially the ones I know, they're trying to do it like me. They're trying to do it the right way. They're trying to live lean. They're trying to save money and think about retirement. So even if you try to do it the right way, it's difficult because the cost of everything's so high. It's the insurance is high, health insurance is crazy, car insurance is crazy. To get a new vehicle, it's crazy expensive. I mean, to do anything, it's crazy expensive. Rent's crazy expensive. Interest rates are crazy high. I don't even want to say the interest rate that I was paying on my student loan. Now I'm still paying on my student loan right now. It's almost like credit card interest on a student loan, which is it shouldn't be that way. So it's a tough environment for young people. I'm not trying to play the victim either. We can make it, but it seems like it should be each generation should have it better than the last generation. And it seems like we're going in reverse. The last generation now had it better than this generation, and it looks like it's going to get worse from this point forward unless something changes. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree, and I would also have to say, Lego Joe, that it's not really because a lot of these people want to live like that. It's really because they have no other choice. There's just no way for a lot of people to make money to really be able to think about anything rather than paying the bills. And it's a shame, really. It's a terrible tragedy, and it shouldn't be like that. The country should not be in such an economic state that is the going way of things, and people just have to accept that as a way of life. People should be able to easily put money behind them and save for retirement. That was easily done in generations prior. Probably one of the best qualities of life that's been seen in this country was for the boomers in that generation. That was probably the most opportune economic window that existed. The boomers and then Gen X. Anything in between, they had a really good time. Everyone else from then has been getting it rougher and rougher. And that's generally because, I'll say this, back in the day, the U.S. government used to regulate things quite a good deal. And that's something that I got to say has been a huge misnomer is, everyone likes to make the statement, the worst thing to hear the government say is, I'm the government and I'm here to help. That is literally the way that we have pretty much managed the country for decades since the beginning of the 20th century, especially since the Great Depression. Go back and look from the 1930s all the way up till about the 1970s and look at how much government regulation there was. It was an endless amount, even especially compared to now. There was a huge amount because the government had to step in and tell people, no, giant corporation, you can't sit there and screw over all these people. And no, random people, you can't go around screwing over random other people or the corporations. You can't do that either. Everyone's got to play fair. Everyone had to play fair. The corporations, the people that were working for the corporations, everyone. That's what they had to do. And nowadays, we've completely gotten rid of that. So it is a dog-eat-dog world out here right now. People are getting screwed over everywhere. The corporations are screwing over the citizens. The citizens try, if they can, to screw over the corporations, although it's really getting one-sided these days. And that's just the way of the state of things these days. If we put in some actual well-thought-out, well-planned-out regulations, not ones that are absolutely stupid that are come up with harebrained people who have no idea what they're talking about, but actual well thought out, well calculated regulations like we had back in the day, things will start to stabilize, much like they did back then. Because for people who would say it wouldn't, why in the world did it stabilize back then? Do y'all know what America was like in the Gilded Age? The Gilded Age is called the Gilded Age because it only looked like it was plated in gold and that was it. That's literally the period we're living through again right now. And how did we get out of the Gilded Age? Through a decent amount of government regulation that stopped the screwing that was going on nationwide. That's the only way that we got out of it, and we've apparently lost that mindset or lost that understanding that sometimes the government does have to come in and regulate things, so that way we can make sure to stop the exploitation that goes on in a lot of different ways in the country nowadays. That's honestly what I would have to say, because another thing that is crazy. Companies nowadays don't give retirement options. Now you have to go do a 401k on your own. Back in the day, companies used to give pensions. The only industry these days, actually some of the few, that still give out retirement pensions or retirement plans like they all used to have to do, is the railroads and the airlines, and that's about it. If you go work
for the defense contractors, I think the defense contractors still do retirement plans, don't they?
I think some of them do, but I think other ones have moved on to the 401k and you got to do it on your own.
Interesting. And also, I know some companies match like those retirement accounts. Like they moved away from pensions, but they started matching your retirement accounts. At least some of them do. It's not all of them.
A lot of them don't, because the regulation that forced companies to have to give retirement plans kind of disappeared around the 80s. So then a lot of them just told people, you're on your own, go do a 401k or something like that. And that's absolutely crazy. It's like why in the world are there not retirement plans anymore? A lot of people back in the day, they used to say, oh, I don't even have to worry about Social Security. I got my retirement plan from my company that I've been working for 20 or 30 years. I'm set, or I'm good. And they don't do that. They don't do that now at all. They don't do a lot of things that they used to do. It's just absolutely ludicrous. It's ludicrous. And then you pay in all of this amount in taxes, which is quite an exorbitant amount, especially for the common American these days. It's around 30%. You pay in a third of your income to taxes. And what do you get for it? In most places, I know in the Southeast specifically, you don't get squat. You don't get anything for paying taxes. It's basically like the government isn't even there providing any services for your taxes. Out here in Utah, it's much different. The city of Salt Lake actually seems to provide a lot of utilities and public services to the citizens basically free of charge for the taxes that they pay, which is quite miraculous because I've never seen that in the Southeast. But that should be the case nationwide. You should be getting a lot for what you give to the government. You're not giving the government a tribute when you pay taxes so that way you don't go to prison or the government doesn't thwack you over the head with a club. You're giving them taxes with the idea that they're going to be providing some service in return beyond just common defense of the republic. And that's generally what you're doing it for. But anyways, I hope that doesn't.
Also, by the way, like not everybody knows the struggle right here because and I respect it. Most people would rather work for a company than go into self-employment, which I get it. Like actually, it's a lot easier to work for a company, in my opinion, than being self-employed. But I saw Timothy saying in the live chat, he said self-employed, like you guys and myself, are really on our own as far as retirement. That is true. Also, by the way, if nobody's ever done this before, self-employment taxes are wild. Like if you don't work for a company, I'm sure most people know this, but if you don't work for a company, you got to pay self-employment taxes, which is usually the part covered by the company you work for. But if you're self-employed, you have the privilege of paying that as well. So essentially, the government penalizes you for being a small business by also tacking on self-employment taxes to the small business owners, which we would qualify as small business owners. So we get hit even harder with the taxes. And also, we are our own health insurance plan, and we are pretty much everything. Anything a company would provide, like retirement, we have to be that net. Any self-employment person has to pay their own when they're in business for themselves. So it's a doozy too. It's a big one.
It is a big one. I saw someone say employers should not pay retirement, pay your own. I say that they should, and that's coming from someone who pays self-employment tax, and we run our own business. We don't have any employees, but large companies should be paying out retirement plans. That is absolutely ridiculous that they don't. Employees can give 20 and 30 years of endless dedicated service to a corporation, a company, or any business for that matter. And then all they get in return when they retire is thanks, get lost, figure it out. That's wrong. Like that's completely wrong. These companies are not only major economic engines to make their founders money, which I think that they are well deserved to make the lion's share of profit that their company makes. They're owed it. They created the company and had the vision. But at the same time, they owe it to society, to the people of this country that are working for them, to make sure to carry them through, considering that they gave their prime to the company ought to give them something in return. And I think that a retirement plan, much like it used to be the standard throughout this country 50 and 60 years ago, that should be the case today. I don't know why they ever went and said that companies did not have to provide retirements. I just have no clue why they did
You mean, when you say retirement, you mean like a pension, like a retirement pension where the company pays a set amount during your retirement years?
Yeah, like the railroads and the airlines, they do it.
Yeah, I mean that's something there that it's up to the companies to do that. The companies have to be altruistic to actually pay a pension out, which obviously, I would say most large corporations these days are not altruistic whatsoever. They're finding every way possible to basically find ways to save money so that way they can increase their bottom line, basically. So it's just, I don't know. Like it's to expect the companies to be altruistic. That's a big ask.
Well, you don't have to expect them to be altruistic. It'll be defined in statute that they have to be altruistic, whether they want to be or not. And that's the thing. Like you don't have to sit there and go, please, pretty please, can you make sure that these people who gave their entire lives to your company, you actually take care of them when they're too old to work anymore? You don't have to do that. You say, by codified in the law by statute, the companies must provide pensions to workers who have worked 20 years or 25 years excess for your company. You must provide them with retirement, and so on. And if they, and then of course, the next thing they'll do is that they'll just start firing people around 24 or 23 years in, so that way they don't have to do that. But then also you can then add into that very same statute that if such an action is made like that, then that employee does have some form of a civil suit that they can file against the company for wrongful termination at that point. And then you can find a workaround for that. But generally,
just don't go like one thing people are doing these days to like try to like supplement the fact that the financial situation is not great. Some people resort to gambling in the stock market, like taking these massive risks and stuff like that, like with cryptocurrency, stocks, and things like that. That's a terrible idea, if you ask me. Like just from my personal opinion, terrible idea. I've heard horror stories of people going out there and being like, "Oh yeah, man, this penny stock right here, this one's going to the moon. I'm going to make it rich. This is going to be my retirement." Then they go throw their money into that penny stock. Then whatever money they had suddenly disappears. And when people get more desperate, they start doing stupid stuff like that, like taking these huge risks because they feel like that's their only option. So when you start seeing that, that's also another sign that people might be feeling a little bit desperate.
Also, I just saw someone here, Michelle Lee, say, "Stop complaining, stop blaming the generation before. Go get a real job that offers those perks." There are no jobs to get that have those perks. I don't know if you're blind or dumb. You might be both, but there are no jobs out there. You know what's crazy is that I don't really consider this to be a real job. But the thing is that this is the only job that anyone that I know in my age bracket is making any money at. This is the only one. Every other person I know that's my age doesn't have a job, or they're working at McDonald's. There are no jobs like that. And also the whole stupid thing about prices are down except for beef. Are you stupid or blind? You can literally go to the store and see that's not the case. Like, you'd have to be an idiot to believe that. I can literally go down to the store right now and look at the prices for flour, for steak, for eggs, for anything, and it's far more than it was 2 years ago, because I was buying groceries 2 years ago, so I'd know. I'm not a stupid idiot that gets told by some politician, like Biden in the last term when he said the economy was doing great in the last months of his presidency, or this guy right now, who just wants to sit there and lie to your face and treat you like the idiot you must be, and sit there and tell you everything's great, and then you just believe that at face value. I can look at the prices and tell you it's not great. You don't even have to be a scientist. You don't even have to be smart. You don't even have to be high school educated to see that. You just have to know numbers. If the cost of a pound of flour was $4 last year and it's $7 this year, well, obviously the economy isn't doing as great as it was last year. Doesn't take a lot of sense to come up with that one. So
I guarantee you, if you have kids that are in our age bracket and you're trying to assist your kid with finding a job, going to university or something like that, I promise you, all the parents out there know what we're talking about. Any parent with a kid in our age bracket, and we're not even kids anymore. It's like we used to be kids, but now we're a little bit beyond that age right now. But any parent in that position, you will know what we're talking about. Those are the people that understand. I promise you, I could almost guarantee you that the person that was saying that probably does not have kids, because if they did, they would see that their kid is probably having a hard time finding a good paying job that's actually a career, not just like a job, like waiting tables or something. There's nothing wrong with waiting tables, but proper career jobs where you like get into them, you're expected to like serve your term in that job, and then you get out and then you have a retirement. Those type careers like that are not really as plentiful as they used to be at all. So most people understand it if they have kids, but if you don't, I'll simply tell you, go look at the current job market. Pretend like you're looking for a job right now and go look at it, and you'll see.
I just got to be honest though. Someone coming in here doing something that patronizing, stupid, literally repeating the statement that was made today that the economy's fine except for beef. And also I got to say this. Now we're going to go to war with the beef farmers of the country. We're going to act like they're the problem because there's a bovine flu going around killing off the cows. Like, do people not understand that sort of stuff, that they can't really regulate the prices that well? Because sometimes the supply is far less than the demand. We're now going to go to war against the American cattle farmers that produce the nation's beef and have for hundreds of years, and we're going to go and import Argentine beef and undercut them and destroy the whole industry because of the bovine flu going on like that. Anyways, enough about that. I'm about to start getting heated here. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So moving back into our super chats once again. And also, by the way, I just want to make this disclaimer. Don't take anything I was saying as political, by the way. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of venting a little bit just from my own frustration. So I'm gonna drop the topic on my end and just cover the super chats, because honestly, I will end up getting heated myself, because it kind of gets me agitated a little bit, to say the least. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to James Hughes. And of course, James Hughes, a channel legend, and puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, James, for that support as well. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And James said, what would your plan be for Ukraine to win the war with Russia? And my opinion is that Russia has 1 to 2 years of fight left.
I would agree. They have about a year and a half left, in my opinion, so right within your 1 to 2 year range. The way that Ukraine wins the war is that we continue to supply them with just about anything that they need in the meantime, and we bleed the Russians dry economically. That's pretty much the way to win the war. It's practically a war of attrition at this point. So as long as the Ukrainians can hang in and slug it out with the Russians and stop them from gaining any ground, and we bleed out the Russians economically, that's, at least in my opinion, the way the war can be won. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and I hope that was the answer that you were looking for. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to James Hughes. Once again, he throws in a second super chat, another 20. And a huge shout out to you, James, for the second support of the night. And he said, what do you guys think of the net shotgun shells to take down small drones? And I would say, James, that was a genius thing. That was genius. I remember Andrew actually mentioning that, I think, back in the day before they started actually doing it. And that's a very ingenious way to take them down. It's a very, I guess you say, more of a crude way to do it, but it works, apparently. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say it's a really good idea. I think I did bring that up before. I can't really remember, but I think I did bring it up before it became a thing on the battlefield. But I think that it is wildly effective and really the way forward, to be entirely honest. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the Wolfman, and the Wolfman puts in a 10. And thank you very much, good sir, as well for that support. He said, we're messing with Russia's border now, and oh, how the tables turn, or how the turntables.
I like how these tables turn more so. I like how it's happened. I like messing with the Russians. I think that it's appropriate, and I think that it also puts them back in their place and reminds them that they don't run the roost. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Chronic Barbarian, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Chronic Barbarian, for that support. And he said, for the Wheatza.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support for the Wheatza fund. I absolutely love Wheatza. And we're going to make sure to get some Wheatza soon. Man, Wheatza. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hokey Redneck, and he puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Hokey, for the second support of the night. And he said, who saw the Northern Lights last night? And I didn't personally, Hokey. I didn't get to see them, sadly. I looked at a map that showed where you can view them the best, and it looked like Salt Lake City was probably one of the worst places to try to view it from. So sadly, we didn't really get to see it. I know one other person that lives to the north of Salt Lake City. They could see it from their place, I think. Some people got to see it, but some people didn't. And sadly, I didn't get to see it. I looked outside, and I just couldn't spot it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say I didn't see it either, unfortunately. I looked and looked after the show. I just didn't see him. And I don't think we were able to see him tonight either because I was once again working when they would have shown up. So unfortunately, I just didn't get to see him, which is a shame. But there will be another time, I'm sure, that they'll show up again, and I'll hopefully get a good little gander at them and kind of get an idea of at least what they sort of look like. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that the best that we possibly can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Votive7478, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Votive. They said, assuming Ukraine does not lose, what is the most likely outcome of this war? And does Russia collapse and citizens establish a new government? And does NATO establish a new government? And do they reach a ceasefire?
NATO will not establish a new government. NATO is perfectly secure. As far as Russia goes, it's unclear whether their government would completely collapse or not. I have a feeling that it will probably retain the current structure it has right now, but there will be a coup to oust Putin and a new leader will take his place, but the Russian government will not completely collapse and the nation will be reformed. That's highly unlikely in my opinion. So generally, the best way to look at it, it's not going to be anything extreme. NATO remains the way it is. Russia will have a coup most likely and overthrow Putin, and a new leader will take his place. Not a new government and not a new country. It's just a new leader. And then the Ukrainians will most likely make it through, but they will also end up possibly losing some land by the end of this, unfortunately, most likely including Crimea. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from 42 versus 42. And they said, I'm just afraid that more Russian oil is being sold through proxies than we know. And I agree. He said, either way, remember to keep your hands moisturized. You're in the desert now. And that's a good point right there. We do need to stay moisturized, as you do say. I will say, the air is dry out here, and it has been affecting me a little bit. So definitely, I think a humidifier might be a good thing. I know some people recommended that in the chat before. But back to your first point, though, I agree with you. I agree with you 100% on that. I think more Russian oil is definitely being sold in the black market than we're aware of. We've seen some documentation of them transferring it to Chinese vessels, but not a whole bunch of documentation documentation, but I would imagine it's probably more than we think. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to generally say that, in my honest opinion, it's possible that they're using some sort of third-party shell company or intermediary to try and get the oil out. But even still, they can only do that in such a large volume, because if they did it in any massive volume that completely supplanted what they're doing right now, it's going to be noticed, and eventually that loophole will be fixed, and then they'll be back to square one again. So whatever they're doing, it's fairly small, and it still won't float these Russian oil companies, which is fairly clear, at least at the moment to me. Beyond that, though, we will make sure to stay moisturized. I haven't actually been having much of an issue with the dry air. My voice has been generally fine, honestly. But I have noticed that my hands have started to crack. I'm just kidding. My hands are also fine, too. So maybe I'm not affected by this whole low humidity thing, maybe. I don't know. Still, a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jack US 235, and he puts in a 10. And Jack said, thankful as always for the coverage and LSA.
Hey, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and a huge thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Waffle, who puts in a 5 and said, the U.S. did what?
Oh, the U.S., yeah, we flew a bomb into Russia today. It was quite a sight, really. I actually was very enthralled to see it. I thought it was really cool, and I thought it was well-deserved for the Russians, at least. Hopefully get them a little scared. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
You know what I would do, honestly? Here's what I would do. If we're going to fly like the bombers close to the Russian border like that, and we're trying to send a strong warning or something, if Putin wants to be petty and keep flying drones over European airspace, and we're a little too scared to take those drones out of the sky, even though NATO has every single right to defend their airspace, maybe they ought to like fill the B-52 with some cow dookie and drop that on the like the Belarusian border or something like that, because Belarus ain't gonna do anything about that. They'll get irritated, but they're not gonna do nothing. Drop some doo-doo over there or something. If they want to be petty, we can be petty back.
You know, I like that idea. You know, I got a better idea. What if we flew some drones deep into Russia, and they were just filled with kerosene, and we just let them land somewhere and see what happens? I think that would be an interesting result as well.
I like the doo-doo idea better. It's a lot less harmful. And we don't want to necessarily start a war. The doo-doo is not going to start a war. I mean, ask North Korea about that. You know, the doo-doo balloons, that was a whole thing. North Korea was the one that sent the doo-doo balloons over and dropped them on the like diplomatic places in South Korea, right? That was the country that did it.
Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah. Also, I see some people saying that's a bad form of warfare, but it's like it's cow. It's cow. It's not like anything like it's just cow. I mean, technically, that's providing a service because some people pay for that. Some people pay to get the doo-doo dropped. Some people use it as fertilizer. So I guess you could say that we're supporting Belarusian agriculture by providing them some extra cow dung for their services.
I got a better idea. I got a great idea, Matthew. I got a great idea. What if we drop the list on Belarus? Now that will the list.
Are you still talking about that, Jeffrey?
That whole thing's a lie. It's not even real.
It's all a lie.
But what if we drop that?
We'll find out.
But what if we drop that on Belarus? I mean, like, at that point, man, the U.S. would nuke Belarus to make sure that thing doesn't exist. You know, maybe we ought to drop that on Belarus.
I mean, honestly, the list, you got to be careful with the list.
Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Like, you gotta handle that thing with care, honestly. You know, like bad results could come out of that, you know?
Yeah, I think so.
Man, I'll be honest with you. But man, he's getting quiet. But with that, we are on to the next one.
I just wasn't sure where to go with it, honestly. I'm just not sure where to go with it. I mean, I could have gone a little like this, or I could have gone a little bit like that. They said, sir, where do you want me to go with this? They said, what are we doing? What are we saying? I don't know, sir. I don't know. But anyways, moving into our next one here. This one goes to the Wisdom to Know, who puts in a 5. He said, here we go, an LSA.
Hey! And here we go, indeed. Around and around again and again. Never ending, never stopping. But a big thanks to you, once again, for the support and helping this channel to keep running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. Keep it running. Keep this news rolling. So humongous thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Perilith Official, who puts in a 5 and said, big brain idea. Let's attach jets under Russia and move them to Mars. I'm sure they will be fine.
You know, that's not a bad idea. We'll have to look into that. I'll have our top guys on that. But a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that addresses that the best we could. And I got to say, very interesting indeed. Very interesting. I like how you think there. I like how you think. But thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Spartan115, who puts in a $5 support and says, if China does continue to keep Russia alive, basically life support, wouldn't each bailout push China's invasion of Taiwan farther and farther away?
It's possible, because the Chinese economic situation would be getting bad really quickly. And considering that China's already a little bit economically unstable at the moment, it's probably not the best idea to go and throw hundreds of billions of dollars of additional expense on top of themselves every single year to keep Russia alive and then never even get a return off of that investment. So, yeah, it might actually push you back a little bit, actually. So a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from none other than user DT6GE1PD1J. And I'm trying real quick. Give me just a second. It is S. It's the S. I'll be honest with you, I'm having a hard time finding out your name because of the YouTube change, but hopefully I'm saying it properly. I think it's S who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. And they said, hi, Enforcers. I've been listening since the beginning, and I quote you two all the time, and that's the sound of money. Call them out. And we're on to the next one. And it's my B-Day, and I'm sending love to you. And also, happy birthday to you, by the way. And it's good to know you've been here for a long time. I think you sound like old guard to me, based on the sounds of it. You sound like old guard, and we do appreciate you being here. And also, hope you had a good birthday. But Enforcer, what say you?
Happy birthday to you. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running. Happy birthday to you, by the way, really. I hope that you've had a great one today. And also, you've been listening for a long time, especially to remember the call them out deal, because I don't think we've done that in years. But I gotta say, I'm honored to know that you quote me. And I gotta say, or quote both of us actually all the time. I gotta say that we're honored by that. And it's really crazy to think that there's people out there that are quoting us. I never thought we'd make it to that point, but we have made it to that point. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and the kind words. And of course, I hope you have had a amazing birthday today. So a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And someone just said, time to stop useless questions. Time to stop your stupid babbling. Man. But anyways, that we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Dubstep Kid, who puts in a 5. And he said, I can't stay tonight, everyone. It's been about a week since I popped in. And also, it's good to see you once again. And he said, timing with when I'm driving has not lined up, but miss y'all and love y'all.
Man, I hate to hear that, but I hope that the driving's been going well. I'm assuming that you're probably an 18-wheeler driver, and oh, goodness. I had enough of 18-wheeling in that damn Penske. I tell you, that Penske drove me crazy. But I hope that you're doing well out there, and I hope that things are good. I hate to know that your time window isn't really lining up with ours, but I still thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And thank you for checking in tonight. It's good to know that you're doing well, and I hope that you're continuing to do well out there on the great interstates of the U.S. of A. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, like if you're like a real long haul trucker or something like that, like your truck's a lot more comfortable than, like a Penske truck. I think the Penske trucks, I think the actual frame of the truck is like an international something. I can't remember the exact model name of it, but I think those are mainly for like around town. They're not really for like long haul like that, even though people obviously use them to go long haul. Like obviously Penske rents them out for people to move, but I think those are like a lot less comfortable than a proper like moving truck, like a semi truck.
Oh man, honestly, when I look at these, man, I have an aneurysm now, and almost dropped dead. I hate these so much. It was so terrible driving it, folks, across the whole country. 40 hours in this thing at interstate speeds. I hated this thing so much by the time I was getting out of it. Hated it with a passion. But I drove it so damn well by the end of it, too. I was really good at driving that thing. And honestly, folks, I had to relearn how to drive my car after driving this thing because I got so used to having to drive like what felt like an 18-wheeler sized truck with a car trailer that by the time I got back in my car, I was taking turns like super wide and everything and looking in my rear view mirrors too much. And I was like, man, honestly, this isn't good. I was like, this isn't good at all for, driving around town. So I've had to relearn how to drive my car. But this is the one. Actually, I don't think this was the one that I drove.
No,
The
it's
hood was
older.
higher. Yeah.
Older model. This one is right here. This is also a Freightliner, by the way. You were driving an international. That's an older international right there. That's not the one.
Man, where in the world's the new one? The new one wasn't even that good, honestly. This thing rattled, rocked, rolled, and did everything else and shimmied so much. Like, that Ford death wobble, folks, that y'all hear about in the Fords every once in a while? This thing had the death wobble going on at every speed. Like, it
No,
never...
no. They didn't have the death wobble. Don't say that. It didn't have a death wobble because that's a whole other thing. It may have been uncomfortable. It didn't have that.
Man, well, I mean, like, it felt like it, man. If you were in it and you saw the steering wheel doing what it was doing the whole way, man, that was a workout to keeping it straight and true. Like, that thing was crazy. But I absolutely could not stand the Penske truck by the end of it. It was terrible. I could, like, honestly, folks, if someone asked me if I could drive a Penske truck across this country again for 40 hours, I would tell them I will never do that again. I don't even care if we don't like Salt Lake and we want to move, I might move into Colorado or another state next door, but I am not moving cross country in another Penske truck again. Ugh. It was terrible. I just have terrible memories of that thing. And it was so damn hot in the cab, like the air conditioner would not work. So it would boil in there, and then I'd have to roll down the windows to get some air, and then like that air would be freezing cold, and then you would be getting like wind blasted at like 60 miles an hour by the wind, and then also sometimes it would be raining, and then I would just have to roll the window down anyways to get some cool air in so I wouldn't die a heat stroke in there, and then you'd be getting blasted by the wind at 60 miles an hour for an hour or so at a time to cool it down, and then also the rain would be getting you right in the eye as well. Like, it was... It was rough, folks. It was rough. Honestly, folks, if I'm going to move across country, you know what I'm going to do, folks? I'm going to call up a railroad. I'm just going to ask them if they'll lease out a boxcar for a little bit to where I can transport it from one rail yard in Salt Lake City to wherever it's heading from there. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Chronic Barbarian, who puts in a 10 once again. And thank you very much for the second support of the night. And he said, how's our marmot these days? And it's been a while.
It has been a while. It has been a while. Let me go get Alan really quickly. Oh, Alan! Alan! Oh, hello there! Hey!
Oh, hello there, Governor. It's been a long time no see out here in the streets of Salt Lake City. It's been a long time no see. You gotta remember, you gotta have a little bit of rock at the bottom. Show the rock. Come on, show the product. There it is. Look at that, a quality product. A little bit of rock down there at the bottom. But you know something? It's also a little bit more crazy than that, Governor. It's also the enforcer. He drove long haul in the Penske truck. I'm having a hard time, Governor, with this accent tonight. I don't know what the problem is. It's like I've lost all sense of Britain. What happened to my British accent? It's not here tonight. It's not there. It sounds a little bit crappy, a little bit cruddy. But tell us more. Eh?
Aw, man, now it's time for me to step in because everyone's here for me. Aw, man, it's time for the fly. Everyone loves the fly. Aw, man, dox 'em. Aw, man, it's great to be here. Sorry I just threw that out. That's just a force of habit. Aw, man, canceling and harassment's terrible. By the way, let me cancel and harass another YouTuber again as a result of my fly-like behavior. Aw, man, it's a great life being a fly, being a parasite. Aw, man.
You know what's crazy, Governor? You know what's crazy, Governor? Is if you go to buy a nice automobile, a little motor car. They're going to charge you a docs fee, but it's not for doxing. It's for filling out the paperwork. A docs fee.
Aw, man, I'm too high on weed to be able to write shit. Aw, man. That's why
I thought it wasn't addictive, Governor. I thought it wasn't something that you get hooked on, Governor. What happened to it, yeah?
weed isn't addictive and it should be legal for everyone. 2 hours later, I'm suffering from effing withdrawals. I'm at the emergency room. Help me. Oh my god. Man, that guy
You got
is.
to pay your deductible. You got to pay the docs fee if you're going to come in for a little payment.
Oh no, he didn't. He didn't pay anything in the hospital, man. Freeloading and all. But beyond that,
Free load.
huh?
A free load.
Yeah, free load. He's a big fan of those.
Man.
He gets those all the time. Like,
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
oh man, he gets those. When
Oh.
man, honestly, man, you walked me right into doing that one. I couldn't resist. I had to say it. But beyond that, man, waiter, another hit piece. Like we're about to get one for that, I'm sure. But still, an absolutely crazy time out here with the Marmot and the Fly. We love the Marmot and the Fly, and I've got to say that it is a wonderful and incredible thing to know that we were able to have Alan the Marmot and the Fly here for a little while. I mean, we don't get to have them here often, like we make their appearance scarce so that way they don't get old. So it's always a treat whenever we have them on air. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it rolling. And also, I saw someone say, my friend was greened out and he went to the hospital and they gave him a quit smoking pamphlet. I just find this really dumb about like the weed smoker. Like, I gotta just say, this is my personal take. They say that smoking tobacco is not good for your health, right? Because it's inhaling smoke into your lungs. And generally inhaling any kind of smoke into your lungs is not good for your health. But then the weed smokers will tell you that smoking weed is healthy, although you're inhaling smoke into your lungs as well. Like, I remember when everyone used to say, like, I remember this, that vaping was fine and there was no bad health effects. And that's only because vapes were brand new and there was no research into them. And now people are finding out that vapes are wildly bad for your health, even worse than cigarettes. Is what people are finding out now with like the whole wet lung deal and a million other health issues that you can get. And I just sit there and think about the people who like are huge into the like weed smoking is just great for you. And I'm like, why in the world does it have to be great? Why can't they be like the cigarette smokers that will admit to you that they're killing themselves by smoking, but they still do it anyways just because they want to? Like, I feel like that would just be more honest than making it sound like weed is a wonder drug, because it really isn't. It's like anything else that you inhale that's made of smoke. It's not good for you. Like, that's just common sense. Like, that's my basic input. Because a lot of people say smoking weed makes you feel good, and so that helps you out with anxiety and stuff. It's like, doesn't cigarettes do the same thing, like to a different extent? Like, cigarettes make people feel good when they smoke them. That's what the nicotine does. So couldn't you make the same argument about cigarettes? No, you can't, because there's been enough health research done to know that that's not healthy. Weed hasn't had that research done yet, but it's coming around the corner. They'll eventually come out with the whole deal about what weed does to you, because obviously anything that affects your normal state of being or makes you inhale smoke isn't going to be healthy for you. Not that that should stop you. Like if you want to do it anyways, I mean, drinking alcohol in large amounts isn't good for you. That doesn't stop anyone. So if you want to go smoke weed, nothing's stopping you, at least in any state that's not illegal in. But at the same time, I think people ought to understand inhaling smoke just isn't healthy for you, and I don't know why people are pretending like it isn't.
A lot of people are chewing it these days. Like the whole thing with that, they're like chewing the stuff instead of smoking it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Also, I saw Zach G say there isn't medical cigarettes. Oh, you think you're funny saying that. At a time, there was medical cigarettes back in the 50s and the 60s. There were medical cigarettes back then. They've been phased out because the science evolved and everyone found out that smoking is wildly unhealthy. But that's what my 2 cents are. And also, someone said, until you try it, can't comment. I'm not trying anything where I inhale smoke. All right, I'm almost asthmatic as it is. Inhaling smoke is only going to make that worse. I don't care what kind of smoke it is. And also, I'm not one to sit there and go, "Oh, I can't have an input on cigarettes unless if I smoke one." You think I'm going to get a nicotine addiction just to be able to talk about cigarettes? No, like I'm going to talk about them without smoking them. I talk about alcohol without drinking it. You know,
I don't like any substances that modify your mental state at all. Like I don't really like it. I don't even like alcohol for that reason. Like I don't like anything that changes your state of consciousness at all. I don't know if that's like a personal thing for me or what. It might just be my personality. I don't know, but I'm not a big fan of that stuff. I like to be fully conscious and in full control. I don't like feeling like, I'm not in control of my own, like for example, when you get drunk, like people start yapping and saying goofy things and stuff like that. It's like, I don't really want to like be in a position like that personally. I'm not sure what's appealing about that.
And also, Andrew Honeycutt said, if you want to be president, you have to accept the fact that the populace and voting constituents partake in substances. Oh yeah, I completely accept that. Like that's always why I say, do what you do. But at the same time, I also just want to be upfront. I'm never doing that, and I don't really think it's good for anyone's health to do it. Like alcohol is not good for you. Smoking cigarettes is not good for you, or cigars. And also smoking weed is not really that good, and drugs are not really that good. Still doesn't stop people, and I get it. People have got to make it through the day somehow, some way, and some people might just have to get through the day by smoking a cigarette, having a drink, or smoking some weed. Maybe some people are like that, and that's on them. It's a free country. But me personally, I would heavily advise people not to do any of that stuff and heavily avoid it. Like I've avoided it my whole life. I'm 23. Matthew's avoided it his whole life. He's 25, and hopefully we'll be better for wear when we're older because we avoided that stuff. But for others, it's a free country. They can do what they wish. I just think people ought to be honest with themselves and say, it's helping me to get through another day, but it might be cutting a couple of days off of my life in the long run. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next support goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Marion, for that 20 right there. And also, it's good to see you once again. And Marion said, wishing you both all of the best of the best.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemert. And we are wishing the whole of the LSA and you too, Marion Deemert, the best of the best. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to No Sport Here, who puts in a 5 and said, in reference to drones, Belgium's defense minister stated jammers don't work and we lose track of drones chased, can't be tracked, and drone gun couldn't shoot them down.
Huh. That's interesting to hear. It sounds like they'll just have to shoot them down directly. They should be getting to that at some point eventually, I'd hope. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. So a huge thanks to you so much once again and sharing that information with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I'm curious to see how many people think this. How many people in the chat here on the stream think that these drones that are flying over NATO airspace are extraterrestrial in origin or something that's not operated by an adversary? How many people think that? Because I'm curious, because that seems to be something that's picking up a lot of steam recently. I've seen a lot of people trying to say that. So I'm just curious to see how many people are going to say that. I actually might put up a poll on it and see what the numbers actually are on it, because I think that's also what No Sport Here is probably referencing right there. Because if the jammers aren't working, they're losing track of the drones, they can't be tracked, etc. It sounds to me like they're alluding to maybe these are some type of foreign technology or something like that we're not familiar with. But we'll find out in just a second. I'll run a poll on it. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. And Andrew said, back in the day is too often used to describe complex issues. And which day are we discussing? And should we move forward or backward? And no time machines exist.
And I would say, generally it's just used because getting into the explanation of how it was back in the day is incredibly lengthy and long-winded. And I know a lot of people don't have attention to listen to like a whole hour about how everything was different back in the day. So I just cut it down to back in the day, these things were like this and it was better. But generally, moving backwards is sometimes good in some ways. Like, for example, with how the economy is working these days, moving backwards would be a huge step forward in reality because we've been like, what's crazy is that moving backwards is actually moving forwards because over about the past 50 years, we have been de-evolving the regulation that we have in this country. Some of it was destructive, like the regulations we had on the railroads. And I would say that the Staggers Act, which deregulated the railroads, really did a lot to help them to evolve and survive in the modern world. Generally, because we weren't regulating them properly, and there was some mismanagement involved in that, and that does happen. But at the same time, there's been a lot of deregulation or complete cessation of regulations that's happened that has been absolutely disastrous and has been pushing us more so back towards the early 1900s or even the late 1800s in how the economy functions and how people are living in this country. And so I would have to say, generally, at least in the sense economically, I would say the moving backwards would actually be moving forwards for a lot of people. But a huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so to quickly take a look at this poll right here, a very simple question. Do you believe the drones over NATO airspace are extraterrestrial in origin? Only 12% said yes, actually 11%, while 89% said no, they do not believe they're extraterrestrial. So me personally, I think the answer is very simple. It seems like these drones are definitely from an adversary state. It's either China or Russia. I would lean heavily toward the idea that they're Russian drones, and the entire reason they're over NATO airspace is to disrupt and cause civil chaos near airports. We're seeing the same thing in the Baltic states. We're seeing the same thing in Germany, etc. And it's all the same strategy. So why? Here's a simple question: why would aliens show up and try to harass our airspace over airports? How's that going to advance an alien agenda if there even are aliens? I don't see how that would benefit them whatsoever. And also, why are the aliens lurking over the nuclear sites, which just happens to be the main thing that Russia is concerned about, is the nuclear weapons pointed at them inside of Europe. So to me, it seems like it's not the aliens. I know some people want to say, oh, it's aliens. It's not aliens, it's NATO cowardice. That's why they're not being shot down. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with Enforcer Man on that entirely. So I'd also be within the 88%. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ed, who puts in a 5. And Ed said, "Hello, LSA, an Irish Ed here, and I haven't missed a show for years, and you guys keep my health going. Love you all. Best channel ever, and you guys are the GOAT."
Hey, Irish Ed from Philadelphia, and I hope that things. Oh, actually, I know that your daughter's in Philadelphia, and she's going to where in the world is that university? It's up here. It's up here somewhere. Where in the world is it? Dang, where in the world is it? Is it? I think it's Temple University, if I remember correctly. But I got to thank you so much for the support, Irish Head. And I got to say, it's good to know that we're helping your health to keep on rolling. I know that you told us a while ago that your health is kind of iffy here and there these days. But it is great to see that you're doing well and you're still hanging in with us and still watching these shows. And it's good to have you here tonight. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one also goes to Marion Deemer yet again. And Marion puts in a $20 donation this time. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support yet again. And Marion said, "Will you share pictures of your first snow?"
Yes, we will. Of course, not from our places, but we will share pictures of the snow because everyone loves lots of snow. Because Americans drink coffee made of snow and eat the birds, which will be eaten on Tuesday. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again, Marion Dearman, and we will make sure to share the pictures once it happens. There's a little bit of snow on the mountains out here right now, like the tiniest smidge of it. But it's growing just slightly every day, it seems. And I think that soon we'll see a snowstorm come through, and then, folks, we will be able to show you all the snow pictures, which will be pretty cool. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Robert Krogan. He put in a 2, and Robert said, "Good evening to all."
And good evening to all. Oh, I see you know your judo well. Good one. You, sir, are you trying to receive my limp weenus? How dare you, sir? Get your hands off my super chat. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for the support. And we are doing quite well tonight, and I thank you greatly for asking. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Plazoth. And thank you very much, Plazoth, for that very generous support and also very consistent support all the time. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And we also have a 2 from Bruce Lee. He said, and in other news, Valve, they do be cooking, and LSA.
And they do be cooking.
That's all, folks.
Man, I have a stammer, and that is the
Look, man, you have a pig. He's porky. He's got a stutter. Don't make fun of him, man.
look. Sometimes people they got a stutter and they don't know what to do. And my boy Bo, you got to remember Somalia. What happened? The warlords, the pirates. They boarded the Maersk, Alabama. The Alabama. You got to understand, country rednecks, Alabama. I wish I was born in the land of cotton or whatever, but like you gotta, your kids are gotta ask if there's a man on the moon, or if anyway, you gotta talk about the policy.
Are you okay, man? I mean, are you okay? I mean, is there something wrong with your face? I mean,
look, something's always wrong with his face. You don't F with the Biden. Anyway, what I was trying to the scrivets and the bolts and the nuts and the hammers, and you build a house, and they're jumping the border. With that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. I don't even know what we were doing that for, but it was honestly kind of funny, at least to me. But anyways, a big thanks to you so much once again for supporting and helping the show to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
all right, it is now time to jump into our live chat questions. But first, let's grab our Morse code decoders. We have Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabella Garbo, Our Royal Fluffiness, Kush, Copiateric Sire, and Brian Blairstown. And they said, the Morse says, so we are all going to focus on the Russians and the Chinese because clearly they are the enemy, and LLT, LSA.
And that is the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all on the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps for getting that correct time and time again. It truly is an amazing and incredible thing to know that so many people continue to get that Morse code message correct every single night, and have been doing that since day 87, which was when the Morse code message was introduced to the intro of the show. So a big congratulations to y'all once again, because y'all are doing damn good work in the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps. And so with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the next segment of this stream, where we get to talk to the live chatters. And we got to that early tonight. Woo! We got to that real early, I tell you. But we're going to make sure to have a damn good time, folks, because we got nothing but time. And we're getting to it right now. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so this one, the first live chat question goes to JFW, who said, what's the status of the nuclear power plant? And it was in emergency status, question mark.
It has been stabilized, actually. The power was restored. They've got, I think, 2 high voltage lines connected back to the power plant. So to be entirely honest, it's in better condition now than most other times of the war, actually. So the situation is looking quite good down there for now. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best we can. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Joe Rutland. And Joe said, how many hours are we away from war in Venezuela?
I don't know if we can measure that in hours, because I think it's most likely days. I would assume maybe, honestly, I'd be honest with you. I mean, I'm saying days because it would seem like that would make sense, but like, this isn't even political. With the current administration, you don't know what the hell they're going to do. So, I mean, we could literally never go to war with Venezuela, or we might be going to war with them tomorrow. It's just always impossible to tell, because nothing ever makes sense. It's never supposed to, but I would say in realistic senses, it should take a couple of days. In reality, it may or may not happen at all. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I also just saw a Northerner say, can you guys do Hulk Hogan's voice? No, I can't, brother. That's all I can do. That's all I can do at all is the brother
Didn't he
thing.
die?
I think. Yeah, I think he did.
I think he did pass away a while back. I think.
I think. Allegedly. Oh God, allegedly.
Allegedly.
That's your man. But let's see. Someone said, goodness gracious, some people. Corn Pop was a bad dude. A lot of requests actually. But let's see here. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next one here goes to TS Actual, who said, any evidence of China helping out Venezuela?
A little bit. Like it's more so like moral support right now than direct arms support. We have proof of the Russians providing arms support, but the Chinese seem to only be providing moral support, which at least for the Venezuelans may be better than real material support, because I only think that hopes and prayers might help them at this point with how bad off they looked the last time we saw them. So with that, I hope that does address that quite well, at least the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Little by Little, who said, excuse me.
Oh.
What do you think about the new pact between Australia and Indonesia?
I actually have not heard about that. That is past my radar, as a matter of fact. Have you heard about it, Matthew?
I'll be honest with you, little by little, I haven't heard about that myself either. I didn't know that Australia had reached a pact with Indonesia. That's news to me.
Let's see. Let's pull it up. Australia, Indonesia treaty. Oh, now it's a new security treaty. Oh.
Protect me, brother.
Help me, brother. Man, but let's see. Let's see here. Agreed on a new security treaty. It commits them to consult each other if each country is threatened. So
Watch that video right there, by the way.
it's a defensive pact, basically. That's pretty good for the both of them. It's a run-of-the-mill defensive pact, it seems. But that's good. They're banding together to defend themselves against the Chinese, and I think that's always a good move. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Joe Jacks. And he said, do you guys think Russia will use nukes if they collapse or if Putin is removed by Russian generals in a coup?
If he's removed by generals in a coup, he will never have the ability to use new nuclear weapons because the approval would actually have to go through the battery commanders, which are generals, and they might not be loyal to Putin. And also, if Russia is collapsing, they may not use them then because the upheaval that will happen during a collapse would probably make it too unstable to be able to actually have the orders followed through if the order to fire was given. So, generally, I think that if the Russians get to that point, I think they missed the window to actually try and fire them off if they ever had a window. So I hope that does address it the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to AF Kaplan, who said, any further information regarding the cause of the crash of the Turkish C-130 plane over Georgia? Honestly, really nothing new, AF Kaplan. But we're waiting because they have recovered the black boxes, at least from what we've heard, and they've been sent off to a lab. So the black boxes is the best way to find out what happened if they do tell us the whole truth about what happened, because, not saying they're going to try to cover something up, but, if they find something really damning, there's no telling. Who knows what they'll do with that information. But hopefully we'll find out something new quickly. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree with Enforcer Matt on that. We don't have anything ourselves at the moment. We're really waiting for what the Turks are going to say about it. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Erland, who said, it would be interesting if you could present to us how much poorer Russia is relative to a hypothetical parallel that never engaged in the special military operation.
That is actually a really interesting idea. The problem is that we actually don't have really good statistics off of what Russia is economically doing right now, because they try and hide that as much as we can. So the only indicators that we get on how they're doing are little glimpses where a company reports that they stop production, or they're going through a 3-day work week, or a whole bunch of staff get laid off. That's really the only indicator that we have at the moment. So I wish we could do a comparison like that. Generally, we can at the moment. Well, I wish we could, though. But a great question. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Vibin, who said, do they mean out out of water, like truly out of water in Iran, or just that they will run low and have to restrict usage to important industries.
They mean they're going to be out, like at least in the Tehran area, which is the area that's directly affected at the moment. The rest of the country's fine. It's just Tehran that's having a major issue. They mean they're going to be completely out of water. There's going to be no water in any above ground reservoirs, and the groundwater has run out. So they're going to be flat out of water here very soon. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have one, actually, believe it or not, this is actually our last question in the spreadsheet. I just realized that when I jumped to it right here. This is actually, believe it or not, we've gone through 15 live chat questions over the course of the stream, and including during those last segment here. So we've actually hit a pretty large number of live chats, actually. We've run through them pretty quick, though, tonight. So this is the last one right here of the night.
Oh my God! Well, with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who's the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Akuma. And they said, given the tension between Taiwan and China, will Russia's collapse instigate a sooner window for China to attempt an invasion, considering that Russia won't be there to assist?
I don't think so. I think they're still working on their own independent timetable. I think China's timetable for a war with Taiwan is not really affected by much of anything externally, because they're really waiting to be able to kick off the war off of their material availability of ships that they can use, and they're still waiting to build enough amphibious support ships to be able to kick this thing off. That's generally what we're thinking at the moment. So I don't think a Russian collapse will accelerate an invasion of Taiwan. I think if anything, it'll have no effect at all. So with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, it's time for us to round this thing on out for the night, as someone is absolutely tweaking in the chat right when we're about to get off air. I got to thank you all so much once again for watching tonight. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. We've had 13.1 thousand people here tonight. Now, that's a lot of people. And on top of that, folks, what's even crazier, folks, is that we've had 90,000 people watch before the end of this stream. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to have had each and every single one of y'all here. And we thank y'all for once again choosing Enforcer Airlines to fly y'all through the news each and every day and tell y'all about what's going on around the world. We will be seeing you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. You can always count on us to be live on air at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every night, covering the news like we always do. Now, if we're also lucky tomorrow, Enforcer Matt will be making a short war summary if there is enough news in the middle of the day to cover. We are very sorry that we did not put one out today, but there just wasn't enough news in the middle of the day to be able to put one out. So, we will be waiting for tomorrow to see if there is. And if there is, Enforcer Matt will be the one who makes that video. And so with that, folks, we will see you all then. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight on another night of the news. And if there is enough news tomorrow, there will be a short war video out midday. And also, of course, join us for that 10 p.m. Eastern nightly war news stream that we always do at this time of the night. And join us for that tomorrow as well. And we will see you all then. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.